And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bash us, him.
Attention, roll call.
That's right. Good morning, everybody. 8:05 live Eastern Time and 5:05 in the Pacific Coast. I tell you what, man, it's bright and early and it's cold. I'm up in Yosemite Park, so the elevation gets crazy. It's amazing. California is the only place, I was literally driving yesterday, that you could literally go to the beach and you could go skiing in the same day. Like, I'm wearing a t-shirt. I was all comfortable. I'm in LA and I was driving up to Yosemite Park and the elevation's going up. It's like 1,000 feet, 4,000 feet. Then all of a sudden we start to see rain. Then all of a sudden we start to see snow. First of all, I was like, wow, I saw rain. But anyway, speaking of talking about what's going on in news, check out who's first on the chat today. Juju-licious. Juju's the first one on the chat. Can you believe that? Wow. Good morning, Juju.
Listen, but before we get into all this stuff, there was some weird stuff that happened last night. What time does Juju get in here? He goes at 1:15 a.m. in the morning, Juju gets in here. So let's talk about a little bit what happened last night. So championship weekend last night, big traditional football, Sunday night, not a weird time very weird time that somebody would be talking politics or making announcements. So in the early evening, or I guess maybe I guess you would say early evening, like 6, 7, Jennifer Raj Kumar, state assembly woman. You probably would know her from the girl in the red dress. She's always near Eric Adams in the red dress. So she's been running for New York City Comptroller. She's been running against Justin Brannan and Mark Levine. Out of nowhere, he just comes out and says, you know what? I'm running against Jumaane Williams for public advocate now. I'm switching what I'm running for, like midway through her campaign. So I'm like, that's really weird, because who would replace Eric Adams if he stepped down? Jumaane Williams. So why is she like in the middle on a Sunday night? So I spoke to a few people. Some people like, no, we knew she was going to run for public advocate. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense to me. Why was she running for comptroller? Doesn't make sense to me at all. And then at about 11 o'clock last night, the Minister of Propaganda, New York City's Deputy Mayor for Public Information, Fabian Levy, he tweets out that Eric Adams isn't doing any public appearances this week, and he's going back and forth to doctors, and he's not going to be able to communicate. But don't worry, they have everything in place if for some reason the mayor's incapable of communicating. What do you think about that, Eric?
First of all, I just want to set the record straight. We don't hate Eric Adams. Well, at least I don't hate Eric Adams personally. I hate what he does for the city. I hate who he represents, what he represents. But on a personal level, I don't hate him, and I don't wish him bad health. But I think the timing's impeccable. And I do believe that this could be, listen, this is not the reason why I say this is not the first time. This is the second time. Anytime he's in a pickle that really he can't get himself out of, it appears that some type of medical issue comes up, which last time was when there was a major issue, he got COVID. And now there's some medical issues going on. In my opinion, I bet a pardon could cure these medical issues. I'm sure a pardon would be the best medicine. I'm sure it would cure him right away. Now, if this is a ploy, like I said, I don't wish him any bad health. If this is actually a ploy and this is an actual lie, which why would we think not? Everything from this administration has been a lie. Well, to me, then it's an indication, and it's also a way for him to step down without saying he's stepping down, because Eric Adams doesn't want to submit. Eric Adams does not want to admit that he has to step down. So to me, this could be a ploy. This is basically a way for Eric Adams to step down and say, hey, medically, I can't handle it. And Jumaane Williams steps in instead of him saying he steps down. Those are my thoughts so far.
Yeah, again, I agree with you. I don't wish any bad. I'm not a fan of the guy at all, but I don't wish him any bad health. If in fact he is sick, I wish him a speedy recovery. I hope everything's fine. It's just hard to believe anything because, like you said, So the first time this happens is Ed Caban's home, along with Timothy Pearson and Philip Banks' home, get raided, or what John Shell didn't get raided, even though numerous federal agents showed up at the house early in the wee hours in the morning and searched
What is
their
a
home.
raid?
Yeah, no, it's not a raid according to John Shell, but according to the now chief of department, that's technically not a raid. So if federal agents show up at your house, search your home, and early in the wee hours of the morning, not a raid according to John Shell. So after that happened, you're 100% right. Eric Adams got COVID, couldn't make any public appearances for a week, even though he had done like one about his stupid trash cans that he thinks he invented. He's trying to pretend like he created the trash can, like Kaz Daughtry is trying to pretend like he invented the drone, but yeah, he went off the radar for that part, and then he came back and then he gets, no, I'm sorry, not subsequent, but he gets indicted. So yeah, it's a sad state of affairs when you can't believe what you're being told from the mayor's office, like, at all. To me, it appears to be what do they call that? Like political. It appears to be a political game to me. Something's going on, whether it's a subsequent indictment or he is getting ready to step down. That's how it appears to me. I could see some health issues arising though with him now also. So it's like it's I lean further with something's going on, a subsequent indictment or he's stepping down.
So you're implying it's possible that he actually has a conscience, and that all this is starting to weigh on him.
No, I didn't say he has somewhat of a conscience, not a conscience like me and you, because I'd be done. I'll tell you right now.
Right, but listen, they say that there's definitely a correlation between your mental status and your physical health. I believe that. I wholeheartedly believe that. If your mind goes, your body's going to go. To me, I would think it's impossible, even if you're a complete narcissist, and I've been trying to read up on narcissism because that's what I see is Eric Adams, that at some point this has to weigh down. At some point, clearly we know Eric Adams and Philip Banks and the rest of this administration has no shame. But at some point, this has to weigh down. Like, he's got the media on his back, the public's on his back. He's got podcasts on his back. He's got the mandate on his back. He's got the political party that's, according to him, ousted him, right? He's in political purgatory. So at some point it has to weigh on him, not in the sense that he cares any shame, because clearly he has no shame. But maybe I would think at some point it has to weigh on him that, hey, you know what? I don't have any chess pieces anymore. At this point, maybe it's checkmate for Eric Adams. And that's why I say maybe this is at the point where, all right, I'm not going to step down because, he's too much of a narcissist to say that. But medical reasons, he may have to step down. And if he's actually sick because of what's going on, or just the timing, it happens to be coincidence, then it's like the boy who cried wolf, right? Because why would we believe him? If he is having some serious medical conditions, why would there be any reason to believe that it's true? Because he's only shown everything he's done has been a complete lie. So why would we believe otherwise? Here we go. Coffee and donuts, brother, starting off right and early. Rich Raj, thank you, brother. I appreciate it. Good morning, John, Eric, and everyone on the best show on YouTube. Rich Raj, thank you so much for saying that. Well, listen, we're doing this every day together, building this connection. We appreciate it. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah. So, I'm with you, dude. I think that I think about that. You've been indicted. Everybody around you has basically been indicted. We're hearing rumors of possible arrests in the background, these past few weeks that are being kept really very secretively. And I think everything's crumbling. The Democratic Party's against you. You have some corrupt, low integrity, spineless individuals in the Republican Party trying to protect themselves. And that's about your only support. Like, the average person that's been paying attention does not support you. The average person doesn't support you. You have the lowest approval rating of every mayor in history. You're the guy that you called a white supremacist and you demonized for 3 years. You're now looking for to save you. I think that at some point he could start to crack under the pressure, and that's possible that happened as well. It's possible he's having like anxiety attacks or panic attacks. I could see it happening. I mean, that there is a lot of pressure. I mean, I'll be honest. I've been amazed by the guy that he hasn't really showed any chinks in his armor at all. And I'm like, I can't believe that this guy just gets up there with the gall he does, the way he answers questions, the way he just like blatantly goes out and lies, the messaging that a pure propaganda and lies out of his administration and basically every agency. And he's walked around like it's everybody else but him. He's just everybody's messed up. It's not him. It's not me. It's not me.
Well, the doors were open for him throughout his administration, right? And all these open doors with cronyism and nepotism. But now the walls are closing in. So I think that, I agree. You say there's been no exposure of any chink in his armor, but at some point, we're all human. Like, he bleeds red. He breathes oxygen just like we do. I mean, honestly, I've been looking at Eric Adams. I kind of laugh because sometimes I look at Eric Adams like, wow, this guy's like a superhero. Not like a superhero, but more like a supervillain because, I'm thinking myself, right? John, you're thinking about yourself. And, man, if I was in his position, how would I feel? Like, at some point, you have to say, wow, the world's really caving in on me. I mean, for me, I had 8 sets of administrative charges in 6 weeks, and I didn't think I did anything wrong. I did my job. I arrested those violent perpetrators, but the walls were closing in on me. And that was, I would say the walls have to be closed on him. I mean, everything's crumbling. And you could say he built an empire, right? And he kind of did, right? Because he put all his buddies, nepotism, cronyism. If you really think about it, he did. He worked his way up in politics. He became the mayor of New York City with 9 arrests, saying he's a cop. Think about it. He built this empire based on fiction, and now it's all coming down. So I would say at some point, I mean, if not, he's not human. So Vias S. Ventura, shout out to you, brother. $5 coffee and donuts. He says, morning, gents. Nice to be back after a weekend of bringing the Star Wars prequels for the Republic. I got to laugh at that.
And here we got Hassan too, who's, by the way, was trying to call me when I was sleeping last night. Don't call me that late.
I spoke to Hassan and we were discussing. I was talking about my experiences getting guns and giving some tips and stuff. I mean, it seems like a hell of a cop. He wants to go out there and do great work. Shout out to him, man. Let me tell you something. For having the balls to actually admit he watches this podcast. Shout out to First Amendment. Admit that he's watching this podcast and not afraid. And he's right. Why should he be afraid? You think about it. The NYPD has already suppressed your First Amendment, right? Because you're a law enforcement officer. You took an oath. But they're going to dictate what you watch, what you don't watch. It's just getting a little insane. So Hassan, shout out to you. I mean, God bless you, man. You're a guy that I would want on my team because here's a guy who's got balls that's willing to do the right thing. That says a lot.
That's integrity. Listen, that's integrity. Like, hey, what's wrong with me listening to opposite opinions? I listen to podcasts that probably nobody thinks I listen to, and and like, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with listening to anybody? Or like, there's nothing wrong with that at all. You don't have to agree with everything. I was just having a conversation with somebody last night. We were talking about how his friend stopped talking to him because he said something about Trump that he didn't like, and I'm like, it's crazy. I was like, so everyone that's around this person, he agrees with everything. I'm like, I love my wife to death. There's a lot of things I don't agree with my wife on. You know what I mean? And like, so I should hate her? Oh, you don't agree with me totally?
Well, that's called marriage.
Right? So
there's no way.
He says, good morning, Captain Maintenance and Captain EDM. This is from me and everyone else who keep it going. You guys make my day. You guys are hilarious. And I'm sending you Lavazza your way with cream brulee or cannolis. I'm awaiting for the 4 hour.
I'd like to see him carry those in transit.
Look, we ain't doing no 4 hour podcast, bro.
We've done a couple of 4 hour ones. Plus, some of these are getting real close, 3 hours and 30 minutes.
Well, we might be doing another one soon if Eric Adams steps down or subsequently indicted. Those are the 4 hour podcasts, right? Ed Caban steps down, Tom Donlin steps down, Eric Adams gets indicted. Those are the times we did like those 4 hour ones. So yeah, we might be on the precipice of another 4 hour one.
I'll let Hassan know that my back from sitting almost 4 hours lets me know what time it is, right? Because I don't watch the clock. We just talk. I was like, oh, my back lets me know at some point. I'm like, oh, okay, this is a 3 hour podcast.
Yeah, but I listen. I agree with you. I think Eric Adams' story is I don't know his story ends this way, but I do believe Eric Adams' story is a success story. I mean, when you think about it, if you look at him prior to all this mess, like his rise to the mayoralship, now he had an awful career in the NYPD, but it doesn't matter. Look where he ended up. It's like the same guy. It's like, I remember one kid, he got promoted. I think he had like 7 arrests and he got promoted to sergeant. And everybody was making fun of him. Like, you got 7 arrests, you loser? And he goes, yeah, but you know what you got to call me? Sergeant. And I'm like, you know what? He's right. I was like, we could say whatever the hell we want. He's right. He's like, you're going to be calling me sergeant, right? And I'll never forget that day because I was like, he's right. And it's kind of the same thing. You could say whatever you want about Eric Adams. He retired after 20-something years as a captain. He became a state assemblyman. He became, a state senator. Then he becomes the Brooklyn Borough president, and he rises to the top, becomes the mayor of New York City. And really came from nothing, came from the streets of New York City. And he brought all his friends with him. And unfortunately, he just proved how inept he was and how he wasn't suited for it. So his rise, I think I still say it's a success story, regardless how this ends up. I do believe he is the most corrupt and most incompetent mayor in New York City history. And however the media plays that out doesn't matter to me at this point. I think when we look back in 20, 30 years, that will be Eric Adams' story. But you can't deny that rise there. And then to watch it all crumble because of ego and because of greed, it's terrible. Because I always like all these corruption scandals that are coming out. It just always hits in my head every time I hear someone doing something stupid. I'm like, you had it so good. You had the world. You had everything that most people on this job, like regular cops and lieutenants and captains, people that don't know the mayor, they would dream to have, right? Oh, I could do overtime when I want to. I get a take-home car. I could take off when I want to. Nobody bothers me. There's no pressure on me. I love going to work. And you threw it all away for greed or lust. And it's terrible. It's honestly, it's like, it's terrible. Last time they're ever going to give street guys like them this.
Well, I tell you, when they say a chain is only as strong as its weakest link, which you always learn about leadership. I mean, this is true. This shows right here because Eric Adams, there's no doubt about it. He built an empire. I think he built an empire, but it just shows, you know what? You're only as strong as your weakest links. And his nepotism, his cronies were his weakest links because these guys just got so greedy they wanted more. That's really, I think most people get caught by greed, and that's what happened here. I just think they all got so greedy and not cautious anymore. And I think they all felt they were at the top and like, you know what, we're winning. They really were. If you think about it, no matter what, Eric Adams still won. He had a life. He moved up. He's elevated by rocket fuel also, right? He didn't have a career to brag about for the NYPD. His political career is pretty impressive. If you actually look at his political career of how he climbed up, it's pretty impressive. The amount of clout that he had behind him while being under suspicion, that's why it's pretty impressive. The entire time he's under suspicion, and yet he still elevates himself to be the mayor of New York City at such a trivial time. So it was really impressive in the empire they built. And he managed to bring in all his friends. So he was winning. And even if he goes to jail right now and does 2 years, 3 years, he still has, we don't know how much money this guy has tucked away somewhere. He claims he doesn't have money right now, but somehow he manages to get his hands on money. So it's pretty impressive. Shout out, by the way, to Diane, friend of the podcast here. Good morning. Ready for this one? Here's what she says. No coffee and donuts, but she just says hello. Good morning, John and Eric. I will donate soon. I'm a bit short of money because of the unlawful vaccine mandate, but justice is coming. Yeah. Speaking of with that, right? A shout out to my fellow service members that will be reinstated, vindicated, and compensated when it comes to the mandate. So
this morning he reinstated them.
That's right. This morning. So what I'm saying is, my opinion, first responders got to be next. So on the local level, mayors across this country, if you had first responders that you lost them to this mandate, time to, especially Eric Adams, you need to bring him back before Eric Adams, steps down, or he needs to make this whole.
Yeah. Milagro says Adams has prostate issues and will step down due to medical health concerns. Latina Brown said more things are coming this week. She says more indictments will allegedly be rolling out on the mayor. We don't wish bad on the mayor, but we have to be realistic about what's to come. He's in trouble, possible state charges. Yeah, so I did hear some grumblings about that as well, that it might be not just the federal charges and not just this federal investigation. There could be possibly state charges as well. Like I said, it's just smoke is pouring out fumes over every agency and every single appointment. It's absolutely crazy. Hassan says that I look upset today. I don't know. That's how I always look. So I guess I look upset the whole time.
Did Latina put a new picture or just bigger now? It's like her next top model picture.
No, I think she put a new picture. Yeah. She put a new picture. That's it.
Who else here? Crazy 10-7. That's right. Here we go. Crazy 10-7's got you, Diane. She got you. Coffee donuts. Here we go. Let's not forget all his friends are racist in the truest form, and a lot of us are victims of his friends. I don't wish him hugs and candies. Yeah, listen, the bottom line is, I mean, he's been a man of peril for this city. Racist, cost the city taxpayer money. But even with that, just to prove that we're not on this kind of rant, I don't wish anybody bad health. Anybody. Not at all. If I have a problem with somebody, that's not the way I want them to go out. Eddie West, shout out to you, brother. $28 coffee and donuts. Get those cigars ready, by the way, Eddie. Good morning, lieutenants. My 28 to the desk. Coffee and cigars. That's right, brother. I'm glad you mentioned. Aside from Adams, who do you see leaving NYPD? Good question. Juju, Ahem, Kaz, Tish. How does Adams have so much power over media regarding his indictment? No one is talking about it much. No, that's a good question, John. What do you think about that? I mean, we talk about it all the time, perception management. But how does Adams have so much power over media regarding his indictment? That's a great question. What are your thoughts on that?
I said it. I said it when I saw you while we were still on the job at the lieutenant meeting. Turco and everyone ran away from me when I said it. And I said, this guy is going to be Bill de Blasio, probably worse. The only thing is you're not going to be able to point out his failures and his incompetence because he's black. And it's as simple as that. And like I think I completely nailed it. And that's that's what's been going on the last 3 years. I think if this was Bill de Blasio, oh my God. I just think about the press covers, the coverage of Bill de Blasio. It was insane. It was insane, bro. Like they would have pictures of him as a clown. Like I'm like, and it, like he, not that he cared either. He was a complete narcissist too, and he thought like, but I just think he's gotten away with so much in the media. I also think that there's a lot of media channels being paid by New York City. I think taxpayers are paying for good coverage. I do. I think a lot of these appearances that we see, that NYPD people are going on, that Eric Adams going on. If you notice, it's always the same shows. It's always, they never ask any of the questions. It's always seemed well rehearsed. To me, I feel like there's a line somewhere in some budget or some funding that they're getting that they're paying for media coverage. So I think that's that. Who do I see leaving? We did put out the rumor that Jessica Tisch is unhappy. I mean, we told you here that she told Shell and Kaz not to go to DC, and they went anyway. That should have been a must suspend. And I mean, nobody likes Marjorie's Monsters. They never did. We told you what Tom Donlan said. He said that Kaz Daughtry's dangerous, and Shell's always doing something he shouldn't be doing instead of doing police work and being sitting somewhere, eating or drinking somewhere. So I think, we see Keechant Sewell leave right away. We've seen Ed Caban leave for different reasons. Tom Donlan gets removed. I think that Jessica Tisch is realizing what she stepped into and who she laid down with. And so I think she's upset. Do I know that she leaves? I don't know, because I think that the powers that be want to keep appearances up. But I know she's highly upset. It wouldn't shock me if she leaves. If they said, "Oh, Jessica Tisch stepped down today," I wouldn't be like, "Oh, I can't believe it." No, I mean, this is what he does. He undermines the police commissioner's authority. He ultimately micromanages everyone. He lets Marjorie's Monsters run wild. There's no reason Tanya Kinsella, Kaz Daughtry, or John Sells should still be in the New York City Police Department today. Absolutely none, or in any form of New York City government whatsoever. They were completely failed on every end.
And before I talk on that, I just got to laugh. Patrick Donahue always makes me laugh. When John gets reinstated and has to go to the new academy for reindoctrination, are we allowed to watch him attempt the JST? McCarry, get over that wall. Your podcast buddy Dim ain't here to help you.
Listen, I'll tell you right now, bro. I'm not in nearly half the shape I was in, but I'll tell you right now, I'm going to be at the top of that class still in that academy. I'm telling you right now, I'm still going to be bench pressing. I'm still going to be up on top on the bench press. The run, maybe my time falls down a little bit, but I'm, if they still do the boxing, I'm dropping some people. Like, I'm fully ready to go to that academy.
I was just telling you the same thing, right? I called the other day, right? Because it was my birthday, and I'm like, you know what, dude? I don't feel old because I tell you what, I look at these kids. I look at these kids in the NYPD, and I'm like, you know what? I think I could run circles around half these kids right now at 45 years old. I know I can run circles around them. And listen, I take care of myself and stay in shape. But I'm still 45. These kids are 21 years old. Should be able to run circles. But I know I can run circles at them. I know I can still do that JST. I told you that story, right? I remember I was out with my crime guys. After they disbanded the crime team, we're all back in uniform. And it was like a couple days after that. And guys were kind of down, anti-crime's done. I'm like, you know what?
What year was it, though? What year was that?
It was June 15, 2020. I remember the death
okay.
of anti-crime. So, but I was like, you know what? Let's go have some fun. We took a meal out. We drove to the academy, the new one. And we're like, let's see who could do the JST. So, dude, it was hysterical. We all went in full uniform. We did the JST together, and watching some of my guys was hilarious. Most of them made it over a wall, but there was a couple of guys that couldn't get over the wall. You can imagine. First of all, when we went to the academy, there was a sergeant there. I'm like, hey, listen, we need to get into the gym. He's like, what? I'm like, there. We need to get into the gym. He's like, why? I'm like, we want to do the JST. He's like, really? It was hysterical. So a bunch of people started coming. It was nighttime too. And they started watching us. They were laughing. So I did the whole JST course. And they timed me, and I beat the thing by more than half. And now I would definitely, even now, because I'm in retirement, I have more time to work out. I would kill that thing. But it was hysterical.
I think they dumbed it down since then. I think it's I think it was a little bit harder when you did it.
How could you?
I think it's a different. Remember, you don't need to run a mile and a half. Who said that?
No, I know.
You don't need to run.
Actually,
right after run a mile. I'm like, every cop. Everybody. Not according to a 3-star chief in the NYPD, though.
Hey, Joe Mango, $100. Here's a lot of coffee and donuts. We can get bagels. We could actually hook Sal up with some cappuccinos and espressos. I can see Sal right now as espresso. Hey, that's a free dose. $100, man. Thank you so much. Good morning to John and Eric. John, I'm waiting for your positivity in the Crumb series. Yeah, good luck for that one. When could I expect the series? Well, I tell you right now, the way it's going, you could have show after show here.
Yeah, so I'm envisioning it where we're starting backwards, so we're starting forward. So we want to know the ending before we go to the beginning, So that's how I'm envisioning like a Martin Scorsese type series, right? Like here's amidst the indictments, and then we go backwards. We go back to childhood, and then we move it forward through the years. So that's how I'm envisioning it. All jokes aside, people have reached out that are very interested in a book being written about it. So yeah, I think it's something that's definitely going to come to fruition. I don't think it'll be something you'll see in the next couple of years, but I think it'll be something you'll definitely see come to fruition. Well, but we got to know the ending first. I think that's the biggest part. But yeah, I have a lot of different material already for different chapters or potentially other stuff. So I've been putting that together in my spare time. One, because I'm telling you, it's fascinating. He is an anti-hero, 100%. He's not a superhero. He's definitely an anti-hero, though. Definitely an anti-hero character, Eric Adams, and a lot of his friends around him. I think, like I said, I think it's there's a lot to be learned here and a lot to be studied. And I think, honestly, I think I could really. I never wrote a book. Eric never wrote a book. None of us ever wrote books. I think, honestly, it would be a bestseller overnight. I think if I dropped a book unfinished right now, it would be a bestseller.
By the way, I know you said you could do it. Can you still jump the wall? No problem. And that thing, I still could fly over with my whole lieutenant uniform and my gun belt, fly right over there. But there were a couple guys that, man, we laughed so hard that they couldn't make it to the wall. I don't know what they're doing now. So I wonder if they actually modified that JST.
They showed it. It was literally pathetic. Yeah, but I mean, that's why I always do pull-ups all the time. You know, I do pull-ups once a week. I make sure that I always do that. You know, every now and then I'll do like a dumb race or whatever. And sometimes some of these races, they have like these obstacle courses. You literally have to pick yourself up and up over a really high thing. Like, so I'm still able to do that. I've been also, you know, what's weird is because I don't do it a lot anymore is I started working on just like sitting down without touching anything and then trying to stand back up. And I used to be able to do that and I can't anymore. So I've been working on doing that, like not touching anything, sitting down and just standing up. And I actually watched a video the other day of some old dude that was like, he was like getting back into fitness. And he, instead of doing burpees, what he was doing was he was just like getting to his knees, getting down on his hands and picking himself back up. And he was doing 10 sets of that. And I was like, oh, that's brilliant. I'm like, that's absolutely brilliant because it's these motions that you don't do often as you get older, as you get stagnant. And, you know, that you see that happen in cops early on, dude, where like they get stagnant and they can't move their body anymore. So if you can't do a burpee, do that. Get down, stretch out, get back up, and just do 10 sets of that. Getting back on the floor on your belly, get back up. And so, like, you know, I do a lot of those. I don't know what you want to call them, but I wouldn't say exercise. Yeah, they're exercises, but they're functional, like functional thing. Like jujitsu is functional, right? It's not like just standing there curling weights, right? Like that's not functional fitness. Functional fitness is I could move my body still. And like that stuff, you know, I don't, you know, I see a lot of cops just get stagnant and then, you know, they're 30 and they look like they're 60 and you're like, dude, come on. And they can't move and they can't run. I mean, pathetic, you know. And I'm not saying a guy that's 62, that's a chief, should be able to pass the GST. I'm not saying that at all. But like, you're in your 50s, you should still be able to do it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's why I love jiu-jitsu because you're right. It's functional strength. It's functional movement. I barely ever lift weights. I do jiu-jitsu. I do a lot of push-ups, a lot of calisthenics. I don't do the weights that often because jiu-jitsu beats your body up. It really does. But as much as it beats my body up, sometimes it's like I feel like I can't even walk. It beats the hell out of you. But the flexibility part, it keeps you really flexible. Like that's the part that really helps from getting injuries because you have to, you know, when you're doing jiu-jitsu, you have to invert your body and like, you know, lean on your shoulder in a crazy way. So it helps your flexibility. Don't laugh. This is why I've been definitely when I get a chance, I'm gonna start doing yoga. I've done yoga a couple of times, and let me tell you something. I don't know if men out there think it's funny, but I would definitely do yoga. It helps. Actually strengthens your body. All that flexibility helps out a lot. It's actually pretty tough doing yoga. So when I get a chance, and a lot of it helps out jiu-jitsu, especially lifting weights. Yoga will help too. The flexibility. Yoga's pretty tough. Crazy 10. What's that?
I won't make fun of you for yoga.
Oh, yeah.
Not. Somebody that does yoga, you're gonna have a hard time kicking their ass. 100%.
Yeah, it's pretty tough. I remember, first of all, I felt like a fish out of water. I did it. The first time I did it, I didn't know. I did the hot yoga.
Oh, my God.
They're doing all these poses. I can't even do it. I feel like, I'm like, wow, I'm pretty strong and I'm in shape. I couldn't, like, some of these positions, like, I don't know. There was this woman there. I don't know. She was like a contortionist. I don't know. And she didn't look like muscular, but I was like, wow, she's pretty wiry. Like, the position she was holding herself, first of all, I was slipping and sliding on this hot yoga. If they had a camera, it would have been hysterical. But Crazy 10-7, shout out to you, 1999 Coffee and Donuts. And here we go. Coffee and donuts, cigars, cannolis. You guys are vital. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm going to have to start throwing in some macaroons or something, some Jewish dessert. John, you worked in 6'6". We eat macaroons?
That's it. Yeah, macaroons, baby. Could be French too, you know. But yeah. If I do hot yoga, you're gonna have to send a message out too that I'm not gonna be seeing doctors, and I'm not gonna be able to communicate next week. So, all right, listen, we got about 900 people on here. Let's go. Thank everybody for joining us this morning. If you guys could just do us a favor, like and share out the podcast, we appreciate it. Help us break the shadow ban that we've been under. So we're going to talk about the already short-staffed NYPD reassigning hundreds of officers from patrol precincts, which are precincts up top on the streets, to patrol the subways overnight. And I think there's a lot here. I think there's a lot to write home about. There's a lot of young guys that had gotten reassigned to this overnight subway patrol temporarily. They're saying it's for 6 months, or whatever that time frame is. I'll bring all that stuff up, but it's supposedly a temporary assignment. So we're removing all of them. It is younger guys, but we also have seen people in administrative positions also be reassigned out of their jobs, and some people not in administrative positions, in long-term investigative positions, be reassigned. What are your initial thoughts about the reassignment of cops from patrol to subway or overnight subway patrol?
Well, like anything else in the NYPD, temporary means actually temporarily permanent. That's why I used to tell people, temporarily permanent. So my initial thoughts are, I have questions, right? So the question is this: if Jessica Tisch claims that she's data driven, right? So if she's actually data driven, and she should be, she's a Harvard grad, right? If she's actually data driven, and they did their homework and they determined that many of these spots are not being used properly, to be nice, right? To say that some spots that cops are working in are not being used properly, or maybe wasted space could be better off in transit than what they're doing now. Well, that leaves a lot of questions. And the questions are these: why do we have personnel in wasted spots? And we know why. The answer is because of nepotism and cronyism. That's why we have people in wasted spots. If they actually did their homework. Now, if this is just a complete knee-jerk reaction because crime is actually up in the subways, which is in contradiction from the gaslighting that they're doing, or this is actually because this is ordered by Kathy Hochul, either way, it's a problem, because I don't think this is sustainable at all. And also, we talked about this, right? Taken from, robbing from Peter to pay Paul. I don't think this actually curbs crime. I think this displaces crime, which is a major problem. So it could have a major impact right away on the onside of it. I'm sure initially it will have a large impact because of the kind of shock and awe you hit the subway system. Some of the regular habitual subjects, persons of interest that are on these subways on platforms, they'll probably be they'll displace themselves. So this will have a major impact immediately. But as this starts to become a normal part of routine, having more of a presence, these nefarious characters will be back. So I think for a short period, this will displace crime, but I don't see this fixing anything. And it's another problem. If these spots where cops are working are legitimate spots that we need people, and let's move away from the Abbott spots. Now, I know I've seen some of the crime guys that used to work for me. These are great guys out there that should be in the street. They've now been reassigned to transit. So they're in the street in a different spot. So you're missing a spot. We have a hole in another location. So this is a problem, because now we're short staffing some precincts. We're taking out vital people. People may also want to retire. There's also cops now that because they go into transit, if they're going to get the amount of transit overtime that normally you get working in transit, that could also lead to more retirements. So I think this is going to cause a major hole in staffing. This could be another problem for retention. This could cause another mass exodus. But ultimately, I don't see this curbing crime, John. I see it just displacing it.
I agree with you 100%. I mean, 100% it's not curbing crime. It's not actually a strategy, right? It's just more of putting what do we call them? Like camera lights up places. It's not stopping people from speeding. It's stopping people from speeding right then and there at that moment in time. That's it. They're like camera lights. That's what you're doing. This isn't a public safety strategy. It doesn't bring down crime in the long term. It brings down crime in the short term, but only where these officers are deployed, right? Because 100%, like you said, it's going to displace crime. It's also the thing I think that's vitally important, and I think that the title of this show is vitally important, is short-staffed NYPD precincts. because I think that's something that hasn't been reported properly in the media, in the mainstream. Uh, Precincts are running on empty at this point. You know, they said that precincts were running on empty when we came on the job. If you don't remember that, Eric, they were like, "Oh, they." I remember I went to the 120. They're like, "There used to be way more guys assigned here." I went to the 123. They're like, "There used to be way more guys assigned here." And I remember that. I remember that. It's same thing when it was as I got transferred and I moved up the ranks. Everybody would always tell me like what. And now it was the do more with less. We were the do more with less era, and now it's the do more with nobody. And it doesn't even make sense anymore. And now they're like, oh, you know what? We're going to take some more of you guys. Don't worry about it. And I'm hearing like ridiculous things are going on in the precincts, like where they're actually putting people in sectors that aren't even at work or somewhere else. And like, it's like crazy things that are happening to make it appear that to the public and to anyone looking that there is some type of staff working in these precincts. But anyone I talk to that's on patrol literally says how they're turning out 2-3 cars a night. It's really a failure in public safety. And when we talk about like the emptied, wasted spots, there are people, like I said, there are people in admin spots that like in the licensing division or wherever that you require some type of investigator, and it could be considered administrative work. But it's required that the person's like an actual law enforcement figure. So you see now, and nobody could get a pistol permit. Wonder why? Wonder why there's nobody there. They're all in transit. Complete incompetence running the NYPD. So you're going to see a lot of failures, not just in public safety, but in any process that the NYPD operates in. You're just going to see complete incompetence calling these places. Nobody's picking up the phone because nobody's there. And we're getting to the point where you're going to call 911 and nobody's getting there. And 100%, I agree with you. I think this is going to, I think we saw as of the 24th, there were 307 retirements, a lot of service retirements, a lot more vested retirements than we've and that's been happening these last 3 years. We've never seen these many people vest ever. We've never seen this many people retire ever. And then the resignations too. And I think you're just going to see that. And people are like, oh, it's not a big deal. It's only 307. It's like, yeah, maybe it's not a big deal for the month. Oh, it's January. I'm like, all right, so explain the last 3 years why this is about the average. I like this is about what's happening. And honestly, we're at the point it could increase. I think that reassigning all these people and treating them like they're nobody and they're nothing and their tax numbers, I think has an effect on people. And they're like, oh, I did all this work. All right, I'm out. And then other people that got left behind that are still doing what they're doing, they're like, you know what? Job doesn't care about me either. I'm out. And the morale's honestly, it's in the toilet. So I think I don't think this is good. I don't think this is a good strategy for anybody or anything. And apparently, I'm being told that Jessica Tisch is going to put this whole new reorganization of the NYPD together, and it's going to alleviate a lot of things, and the way the patrol operates is going to be totally different. I want to see it, but at the end of the day, you can't just continue to do more with less. You can't just continue to do more with a depleted force, not only in numbers, but in morale.
Well, I think Jessica Tisch has by far been saying it. She's a patsy for Eric Adams. There's no doubt about it. This operation order that just came out, I put it on Twitter, X, Operation Order 4, that actually addresses the what Jessica Tisch likes to call civil enforcement, right? When it comes to people that are in this country illegally, she considers it civil enforcement. And Operation Order 4 lays out exactly that the NYPD will not work in conjunction with ICE. And of course, there's some verbiage in there, John. I'm sure I know you saw it, but there's a line that's quite interesting that if ICE is under attack, that NYPD will help them just as they help anyone else. So, but what's interesting about that operation order, right? If you read that operation order, it doesn't sound like an operation order of policy. It sounds like a political movement. It sounds like it's complete politics. And so No longer is the NYPD completely apolitical. That's why I say Jessica Tisch is a complete patsy for Eric Adams. Eric Adams is trying to be this MAGA Eric right now, while she still moves the woke progressive politics in the NYPD. That's why she's going to be a patsy, because when this thing is an epic fail and this relationship with the NYPD and ICE is really exemplified in the public, and we start to see that the NYPD is not assisting with getting these illegal military age males, because a lot of them are part of Tren de Aragua. This is not going to fall on Eric Adams. This is going to fall on Jessica Tisch. Well, she's the police commissioner, and Operation Order 4 is authority of the police commissioner. And she knows better. She's a Harvard grad. For her to go and say that this is complete civil and this is not criminal in nature to be in this country illegally, and you and I have completely articulated, debunked that whole idea of this being civil, shows she's a patsy, because when this thing becomes an epic fail, she's going to take the blame for it. So that's why I think if Jessica Tisch is going to leave, and I think at some point she will, and we said this from the beginning, potentially there could be a fifth police commissioner, she should leave now, because if she continues on this path, her name is going down the toilet, and she'll never have an opportunity in politics. So right now, this is a mistake, but I think she's still at a point where she can leave, and she could say she was part of the corruption process moving in the right direction for the NYPD. But if she continues to stay, forget about it. She's getting dirtied in the mud, and her name is completely tarnished. She's done.
Yeah. So, I mean, listen, I don't think that the NYPD necessarily needs to be part of these raids either. I don't think, I think ICE is its own entity. That's what they do. But I think the part where we're saying we won't assist them, and if they show up to your door with a warrant saying, all right, we need that prisoner, that you're not to hand it over, that's the part I have the problem with. You know what I mean? It's not the part that I'm saying, oh, yeah, no, we need to go be doing ICE raids too. We can't even patrol the precincts. Like, how are we doing ICE raids? We're going to take an ICE. Oh, yeah, we're going to do immigration too. Yeah. Oh, really? Oh, okay. So, yeah, I'm not saying that at all. And, I think a lot of people have misunderstood my position on it, particularly because I got a lot of calls about this one. And I'm like, no. I'm not saying that the NYPD needs to do ICE raids. I'm saying that when ICE shows up, a federal agency shows up, and my prisoner's there, and they have a warrant for the prisoner, I don't think it's good policy to tell the cops, yeah, we're not handing those people over. No, it should be, you know what it is? You have to document it and make these notifications and hand them over. I'm not interfering with a federal warrant. That's my position on it. If there was a police department that was staffed properly and functioning properly, and we were a competent police department, and we were a police department of well-trained individuals, then I would say, yeah, you know what? We could potentially put a unit to help get these public safety threats off of New York City streets to work directly with ICE, which we already have, by the way. We already have that. That unit exists, and I'm sure they're standing out I'm sure they're standing out in transit too. I'm sure they're not partaking in their core mission because they're admin. That's the thing. Like, there's a lot here. And so, all of this stuff is dog and pony show. So, moving these officers, it's ridiculous. Does zero other than it's good media, it's good publicity, it's a publicity stunt. This reorganization that's supposedly coming, publicity stunt. Because, I remember one time we I forget what it was, but we were just getting slammed with details. Admin lieutenant was out. So I was like, I'll take care of it. I'll do it, whatever. So I put the details together, and then operations calls at 5:00 on a Friday. All my guys are gone already. They're all assigned for the weekend. I don't have anybody else. And, operations comes down, and they're like, we need this. We need, 1 lieutenant, 3 sergeants, 27 bodies. And I'm like, yeah, we only have 5 guys assigned here, and they're all detailed out already for tomorrow. And I'll never forget, going back and forth with my boss, and he's trying to work every which way that we could fill this detail. I'm like, time out. We don't even have the people to fill the detail if nobody was on these details. But considering they're on the details, we don't have anybody to even short the detail. So we don't have anybody. And he will try to work it every which way to make it fit. And I'm like, it's impossible. There's nobody to get. Unless you're transferring people in here, there's nobody. We went back and forth for a while on it. And he eventually conceded to the fact that I was right. And I had to tell operations, sorry, we don't have anyone. Never mind the fact it was 5 o'clock and I couldn't even get anybody at that. I shouldn't have to order people. I mean, I would always do, and my guys were always good. But like that shouldn't happen either. And those things consistently happen in the NYPD where there's planned details that they don't give it to you the day before at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. It's like, what? You couldn't have got this out 3 weeks ago? But I think that's what's happening here ultimately. You're going to take a reorganization. You're going to put people in transit for overnight control because Kathy Hochul said it's a good idea. Not even because the police commissioner or the mayor thought it was a good idea, because the governor, another failure in public safety, thinks it's a good idea. So, and then you're going to take this reorganization of how patrol operates. Nobody's around. Doesn't matter. Nobody's sticking around. Nobody wants to be here. 10's the new 20. Everybody's leaving the job. And you're just playing games to make the appearance be that everything's fine and crime's actually down. And it's not. And nobody believes it. It's disgusting.
Well, the NYPD is famous for trying to put 50 pounds of shit in a 2-pound bag, right? And that's what they do. Like sometimes I would tell some of my COs, right? Because I always said there's a skill to leadership, right? You have to manage the people below you, but you also have to manage the people above you. And I sometimes tell my COs, like, listen, this is just something we can't do right now. Here's our manpower. Here's our capability. Here's our limitations, right? Sometimes you just have to say, no, like we can't do it, right? And that maybe when you say no to certain things, that's when you could get more resources, right? There's no weakness to say, hey, there's something that we just can't handle it to get you more resources. By the way, Hood Mayor in New York City says you need to read the definition of patsy. I don't know who he's talking to, but yeah, when I refer to, I don't know if he's saying to me or someone in the chat, but when I refer to Jessica Tisch as a patsy, it's exactly that. And a patsy is someone that gets taken advantage of and takes the blame. And that's exactly what Jessica Tisch is. Eric Adams is in a great position because he's really the police commissioner for the NYPD, but put her in a position to move these woke progressive politics and to put the NYPD at odds with ICE. And when this becomes an epic fail, which it is, because it's the appearance of helping out with public safety is there, and it doesn't look too good, Jessica Tisch will be the one to blame. And I agree with you, John. I agree. I don't think that the NYPD has a place to go around and do ICE warrants and look for people that have violated, that should be deported, people that came here illegally. That's not something that they should do. But ultimately, the NYPD is the local municipality to keep public safety. And that means working with agencies in and around the vicinity of New York City, which includes ICE, right? Because there's a lot of valuable information. They should work together. There's a lot of valuable information that could be received by the NYPD from ICE, or actually could be passed on from the NYPD to ICE to maintain public safety. So we want to keep those lines of communication open to exchange information. But to put them at odds with each other and say that they will not help at all is a complete farce. To say that they will not assist, and to say that they will, if they are on the tech, they would help them as if they're anybody else. They're not anybody else. They're a law enforcement agency that works on a federal level. And I think it's also political pandering in this operation to give the perception that ICE is just going around just, like stormtroopers, like they're Nazis and just picking up bodies off the street. That's not the case at all. That's not the case at all. I don't see ICE as just picking up people because they're here illegally. That's not the case. There are people here illegally that are here because they're from the spoils of jails in South America, or they're here and they're illegal military age males. They're part of a gang, and they're a major problem to the public safety of New York City, and not just New York City, this entire country, because these illegal military age males are not just isolated to New York City. They have connections throughout this entire country. So it's important for the NYPD to work with ICE. They can get valuable information about Tren de Aragua and who's moving in from a different state or different city. So it's important to keep those lines of communication. So that operation order, I'm in complete opposition to it. And I think if anything, it hurts public safety. And I do think that when this is an epic fail, and it will be, Jessica Tisch will be the patsy.
I mean, listen, I think, like I said, I think that there's an important thing to keep lines of communication open, even with people who are here illegally. I think I ran into it a lot working in Brooklyn, especially in the Asian communities, where there were people who were possible victims of sex trafficking, victims of extortion, and yet they would not talk to the police because they were afraid of possible deportation. People wouldn't report crimes because they're afraid of possible deportation when dealing with the authorities. So I understand the fine line in law enforcement where it's like, well, all right, they're here, maybe they shouldn't be here, but they're also victims. And so there should be that, we want everyone to kind of have that trust in law enforcement that they could report actually what's happening if they are in fact victims of sex trafficking, if they were brought here illegally. You want people to feel safe. So I understand the fine line, but I think we cross that line when we say, yeah, when ICE shows up with a warrant, you're going to tell them no. Like, I just think that's absolute insanity. And I think, there's a difference between, guys on patrol, how they should act, who are responding to 911 calls and the things that they should get involved in, versus these specialized units that do actually, there are units that work with Homeland Security. So it's crazy to me that these are even issues. I mean, there's common sense solutions to literally all of this. And I think even as it relates to the deploying of officers, there's common sense solution to all of it. Deploying hundreds of officers and pulling them out of depleted precincts isn't common sense solution, in my opinion, to help the overall mission of public safety. This is just helping up the overall mission of Kathy Hochul saying that she's going to deploy cops to actually make what she said publicly happen. And I think that's the biggest failure, is like we're just seeing a complete politicization. The NYPD has been politicized the last 10 years, like so heavily, especially the leadership at the top. But now we're just seeing even our public safety strategies are completely politicized, and everything we do is just a dog and pony show. And this is just more of it. And really, it's being at the expense of public safety, because you're going to lose a lot more cops now. You're going to lose. There's going to be a lot more cops that are going to resign. There's going to be a lot more cops that are going to vest out, and there's going to be a lot more cops that are going to retire. And we're seeing it. And Eddie asked how many cops left this month. I said it was like 307 as of the 24th, and I just got notified by a couple other people that they just threw their papers in today. So the month's not over. So let's see. But what's the long-term effects? It doesn't matter. Like, we're seeing cops leave at a rate, and this is something that the media has failed on. Under Eric Adams, more cops have retired early, or resigned than any other mayoral administration in history. And that, in my opinion, that one fact alone, that one fact that more cops have left under this mayoral administration than any other point in history, shows how much of a complete public safety failure this administration has been. And yet no one has reported that. Nobody. Not one outlet other than the finest Unfiltered. Nobody has brought that up.
Well, this idea of just moving cops around and putting more of a presence is not really a plan, right? Sometimes it's meant for shock and awe for maybe a few days, at the height of maybe a robbery pattern or a couple of shootings, just for a little bit of shock and awe. Maybe just to cool an area down for a bit, maybe to stop potential gun rivalry shootings, maybe to stop some incidents that are happening. But on a long-term basis, it's not a strategy. And I think that, John and I really explored that very well when we talk about omnipresence. Omnipresence is important, but it's definitely not a strategy that can last in the long term. And I have to find it. I remember there was a study by the FBI, and I have to find it. I don't remember, sometime on the job, and I don't have the literature for it. I have to find it. But even when it comes to what they call the NYPD shooting post, so our active or retired members know what it is. Anybody from an outside agency, I'm sure you probably have the same thing. Maybe you call it the same thing. I'm not sure. But so for in the NYPD, a shooting post would be is if you have a shooting at a particular location, and then in the post aftermath, the follow up of that, we would have, especially working in the South Bronx, where most of the crime is facilitated by crew rivalry, gang rivalry. So you would have a patrol car sitting there, or maybe a THV, one of those large vehicles banned by the NYPD with 2 cops, and they would be at that location for about 72 hours. And that was a cool-off period. And that still goes on today with the NYPD. I don't know what this administration, I assume it does, but something that's been going on for many years. That's tradition of the NYPD. It's effective, right? It's effective, I would say, about maybe 24 to 36 hours. And there was a study by the FBI. I have to find it, that after a certain amount of time, that it doesn't have an effect anymore. So the initial onset of putting a patrol car in a specific spot where maybe there was a shooting or crews hang out in that spot, it will give shock and awe, and it will displace and start to move some of your pieces. When I say pieces, you're nefarious characters, people that are hanging around there, and cool it down for a potential gang rivalry or another shooting as a response to the actual shooting that's there. But after a couple of days, it starts to dissipate, and people get comfortable and get used to it, and it's no longer an obstacle. It's just another object that's there that they can work around. So, and I think that's the same thing when it comes to Omni's presence in transit. When you have a mass amount of cops, especially 100, initially, I think in the first couple of days or maybe even a couple of weeks, it will hit shock and awe, start to display stuff. And that's why I say, I think as these nefarious characters, these subjects and persons of interest, they'll get used to it. They'll figure out how to maneuver and MacGyver around it, and they'll return back, and they'll be back to the same thing. And I think after a while, it will have no effect. So omnipresence, in my opinion, is not a plan for the long term. In a short-term stint, yes, sometimes it's necessary to displace a crime, to stop further crime in a particular area. But on a long-term basis, absolutely not. Shout out to you, Sleepy Joe, $5 coffee and donuts. DVO is taking on the job of warrants and PDU. Squeeze for numbers with nobody left, especially the PSAs. Yeah, absolutely. And it shouldn't happen to PSAs. You're absolutely right, Sleepy Joe, because when I worked at PSA 7, approximately 39% of the actual crime that happens, that's close to 50%, is actually domestic. So think about it. If we're pulling our cops from domestic violence to go out to transit or other ways to help out, we're having a major impact, especially in housing in PSA 7, even with being the second largest number of crews in a particular command in New York City. Almost half of that crime is still domestic. So that's a major problem. Never say die. $2 coffee and donuts. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. 516 Diecast, $1.99. Says Pio Fronte, President Duty. Another great week of content. Thank you so much. We appreciate it, bro. So, John, what do you think about that as far as like the shooting post? Did you agree that it helps out in the short term and not the long term, or what was your take on these shooting posts?
Dog and pony show. What's it called? The skybox or whatever the hell it was. That was the stupidest thing ever. First of all, you need a cop underneath it to make sure that the thing doesn't get flipped over. And then you're up there in the thing. The guy's sleeping. I'm like, what's going on up there? It's a waste. It's a complete waste. The only way, in my opinion, is to deter crime is to deter and actually stop crime is through proactive broken window style police work coupled with broken window style prosecution. Other than that, if that public safety strategy is not in effect, everything you do is dog and pony show. Literally everything you do. If you want to remove the broken window style prosecution and holding people accountable for their actions, but yet you're going to continue in the mission of being proactive on the street, would that have a greater effect on deterring crime than we're seeing now? Absolutely it would. But would it actually drive crime down and keep it down? No. You need both ends of those spectrums to work properly and function in order to watch crime, to watch crime drop and stay down and actually watch communities flourish. I think the biggest joke to me is, I hear it often and I have conversations with people about it. Everyone is the national crime drop. The national crime drop. It was like We don't know. It was just this phenomenon where people just stopped committing crime. And they're like, yeah, it's because communities got better and businesses came in and there were more salaries. And it's like, okay. And then when we were at the height of that, we said, you know what? We're going to switch our policing strategy. So I get you're saying it was just this phenomena that happened. But I'll tell you what wasn't a phenomena. We completely changed. We had some criminal justice reform that swept the nation. We had police reform that swept the nation. So this wasn't a phenomenon. This was politically created. And what happened? Crime across the nation skyrocketed, and it's continuing. And it's like, okay, so that was so when we just happened to switch the style of policing and we actually holding people accountable for their actions, and we watch communities flourish, and we watch New York City become the safest city in America, and you didn't worry about taking the train at 3:00 in the morning, even when there were no cops around in New York City, because everyone knew that if there was a cop around, they were going to have a serious problem if they were committing crimes. When that point in New York City was there, and then we implemented all of this reform, and then crime just skyrocketed. It's politically created. It was the crime drop was politically created. The crime increase was politically created. It's not hard, people. It's not hard. Like, we could literally do this in a third grade class, and they're going to get it. They're going to get it. You know who's not going to get it? The people that have agendas.
You know, I'm glad that you spoke about the shooting post, right? Because exactly what I said. The initial onset, maybe 24 hours, 36 hours, shock and awe, just to start to move things, displace it. But it's not a long-term, plan at all, and it's not a crime strategy that is actually effective. I mean, I've seen it time and time, right? We talk about Skywatch. That is complete waste of tax dollars. It's completely useless to be there for 2 or 3 days, but I remember at work in the South Bronx at 143 and 143rd Street, 3rd Avenue. And that's like, this is in a thoroughfare that is in the middle of Mott Haven housing development. You have Patterson housing development. And it's just a huge conglomerate of housing. And the Skywatch is right in the middle. I mean, these two housing developments are right across the street from each other, and they have a huge gang rivalry going on. And the Skywatch did absolutely nothing to stop the shootings. In fact, we had a shooting right in front of the THV in the Mitchell houses. In the Mitchell houses, we had a THV there. Right in front of the THV, while 2 cops were in there, we had a victim who's also was a gang member shooting, who shot 11 times. Right in front of the THV with 2 cops assigned there. And personally, we would do operations, doing anti-crime. And plenty of times, I made observations, my guys and myself, where we got guns off perpetrators right across from the Skywatch, right in front of it, right next to the THV. Literally right next to the THV, we would stop somebody and get a gun. So it does, after a while, it does nothing. And all it does is actually just, we misuse. We have 2 cops manning the Skywatch or one of these posts. Now we're losing those 2 cops. It's costing taxpayer dollars. And it just becomes, after a while, to me, it just becomes an object that is really no longer purposeful. Ron Lason says, part of the problem, Eric, is that both cops were in the THV, not visible. You're absolutely right. And that part, again, this can ferment into so many different things. So, Ron, you're absolutely right, because that part falls on the leadership, and the leadership making sure that the cops are actually there and attentive. Unfortunately, listen, a fixed, I just think that's the problem also. These fixed posts or shooting posts provide like a level of comfort where, most people are going to sit there and eventually get comfortable. Most people are not going to be engaged the entire day of, Ron does bring up a good point. And that was a problematic is not having tough leadership to make sure that, hey, the cops are out of the THV. One, not just because it is effective to stop crime, but the safety of the cops, right? I mean, look what happened to Mia Soltis. She was sitting in a THV and she was completely ambushed and lost her life, and that was tragic. So absolutely, we want cops out of the car to maintain safety. But I don't like these shooting posts for more than 36 hours, to be honest. In my opinion, I say 36 hours because from my observations all the years I saw after that, it really wasn't effective anymore. Kind of just became an object. So there was someone here asked a good question. Let me see if I can find it. I think it was Diane about gang members. If I can find it, these things are flying in here. By the way, Diane says, John, if you want to answer this, because there's two questions. She says, I'm concerned that younger recruits do not have the good sense and solid ethics that older officers who are retiring have. Because now we're talking about this exes. That is just my opinion. Do you both have an opinion? And the second one is, this is a good question. Do you guys have special detail at the funeral homes and funerals for the gang deaths? So I just want to answer that one first. So when it comes to funerals, this is why it's very important, broken windows, and I call it intrusive police work, because intrusive police work is the umbrella, and all the stuff falls under that, broken windows. But intrusive police work is the eye of a police officer working under Supreme Court cases, Justice People versus the Board, to actually have these interactions that lead to arrest, that lead to illegal firearms. It leads to GLAs. It leads to drug arrest. So yes, when I was in anti-crime, we would do surveillance at funerals to wait for potential gang rivalries. We would get information from our confidential informants, and I would have some of my police officers in the anti-crime team would be at the funeral itself doing surveillance, and most of the funeral members would not know we're even there. And then a portion of the team would actually be where the gang members hang out, so try to cover both ends. Now, when it comes to you talking about younger recruits, when we talk about DEI movement, we're getting a lot of people on the job that really don't want to be cops. They're not sure what being a cop is, what it actually stands for. So we're not getting the same bread. We're losing valuable veterans. So yeah, we're getting a hit on it. Absolutely. We're paying for it. What are your thoughts, John?
Listen, I'm not going to knock new people that come on. I knocked the system that I put in place. I stepped into a very strong system, and I flourished in that system, and I learned in that system, and I grew in that system. And I don't think that system's currently in place. So I think that people that would have became great cops in a very strong system, you see out 5 years later, and they don't appear very good cops. And I don't blame them. I blame the leadership, because I don't believe they're stepping into a competent environment that holds them accountable, that trains them, that teaches them how to act as police officers. That I don't blame them at all. I don't blame the guy that's 400 pounds that couldn't pass the GST, and now he's out on the street and he can't go up the stairs in the precinct, or he can't walk up the project stairs. I don't blame that person. I blame the NYPD. I blame the mayor. I don't blame those people. I don't blame when I see cops that don't know the law and don't know what they're doing. I blame the system. I blame the people that are in charge of implementing that system. So I'm not going to say who has different values, because I didn't like when it was said to me. I didn't like when Deputy Commissioner of Equity and Inclusion, Tanya Meisenholder, said we're getting new people that have different values than the older people, than us, the knuckle draggers, right? Like, I don't like that. I'm not going to say that about someone else. I don't know. I'm not going to group identify new people or old people. Like, and I'm just not going to do it. Like, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to group identify, these new guys. I'm not doing it, because it's compromised of individuals. And it's the same way as saying these cops. Like, oh, okay. All right, you're not racist, but these cops. Oh, I got you. So all cops are the same. Got it. So we can't identify based. We're not going to group identify because it's wrong unless you're a cop. We're not going to group identify people unless they're new or they're old. Do the newer recruits appear to be soft, timid, weak, docile? Yeah, they do. Who's ultimately to blame? It's not them. It is absolutely not them. You know who you blame? Blame Eric Adams. Blame chief of department. Blame the police commissioner. Whoever it is in these last 10 years, blame them all.
That's why I look forward. We had Ron Layson on here for an interview where we memorialize his career. We didn't get an opportunity to get through it, but at some point, Ron Layson was the commanding officer for the Candidate Assessment Division. So we've had some great conversations. And, it's my opinion based on my observations. Obviously, I didn't work in that unit, but based on my observations that there was a specific target to hire people that are meek, timid, and docile. And Ron Layson says, he actually is in opposition to that, because when he was working the Candidate Assessment Division, had indicated that there was a pretty thorough process and vetted them. And I said, well, that was before that this whole movement started, because my observations, and I've said this before, I was at the desk one time and a couple of cops like, look, boss, they hire just anybody. I said, well, not necessarily. I think they're not hiring. I think they're looking for a specific type. And those people are meek, timid, and docile. There are some outliers. So I don't blame the people. I agree with you. I blame the system of targeting people that are not necessarily, let's say it, John, because we've said it before, that don't necessarily have the masculine traits. The overwhelming majority do not have the masculine
But
traits.
is it their fault? Is it their fault they're cops?
No, it's their fault.
Somebody
They were
hired
hired.
them and said, "Be a cop. Here you go. Here's a gun and a shield."
That's my right. It's their fault they're hired. So I think in comparison, when you look at the veterans of the NYPD, they came from a different different hiring process where they were looking for those masculine traits. So that's the part that I see, and I appreciate it. I hope, I think we're going to have Ron Layson on here soon and we can discuss those things. I think it's a great conversation, what the hiring process is, at least when Ron Layson on, and in comparison to what we see now, because what we see now, that would be an indication that things did change. So he may agree, he may not, but I think it's a great conversation. And I really do think they hire a specific type. Because you look at the overwhelming majority, and I'm sure a lot of active and retired cops are saying, you see it yourselves. Are there outliers? Of course, right? But overwhelming majority, we see a difference between the new people hired and from the old people, right? Generations change. Generations, people always like to say, oh, my generation was tougher than this one. I don't know if that's the case, but, the world evolves and changes, and we move with that. But, every generation likes to believe they were tougher than the next one. So, but honestly, when it comes to this, I think they did hire a different type in this generation.
But I mean, again, that's due to the leadership, So it's But I listen. I agree with you. So the transit, the transit, the flooding, the transit, you could relate to the shooting posts. I get all that. I agree with you. I personally think that is also dog and pony show. That is smoke and mirrors. That is nonsense. That is leaving cops out there as sitting ducks. I personally believe you have to be on offense. If you want to take down crime, you have to be on offense, right? Same thing after Lou and Ramos were assassinated. Everybody was afraid, and that's what I said. I said, we're going on offense. You're not going to be sitting around with your hands in your pocket. You're going on offense. You're going to be the police. You're going to enforce the law. We're going to meet crime head on. We're not going to get caught out there. You're not going to get caught out there sitting in your car with your head down eating your meal. You're not going to do it. That's it. You don't do that. You're in uniform. You're a target. You didn't know that? You didn't know that when you walk in a deli or when you walk in a store, that guess what? If that store is getting held up, guess who's the first person that's going to go? It's you. You didn't know that? Like, just, nothing changed. Nothing changed. Nothing changes. We have to be on offense. If you're out there on the street, you have to be on offense. You don't want to be a sitting duck sitting there. You don't want to be up in the sky booth. You don't want to be in the THV. You don't want to not know what's going on around you. You don't want to be in the car like this at the red light and people see you like this and you're just like not looking at the car next to you. Or you're like this in the car like this. One's like this. The other one's singing. Like, no, you don't want to be like that. No, you want.
Yeah, Mike. You lost John.
I keep knocking out. We never lose me, Eric. We only.
It wasn't my stomach. Well,
we only ever lose you.
I'm sorry, brother. That was a loss. We couldn't hear you for at least 10 seconds. 10 seconds is a long time. Listen, I know we don't like to acknowledge Juju, but John, you have to answer this one because this is coming from people that have fat triple necks. So you have to answer this question. John wasn't physically in shape. Would he have been able to chase a perp with that weight in him? You got to answer that.
Wait, what? What did he say?
He's coming from fat triple necks.
John wasn't physically in shape. Would he have been able to chase a perp with that weight in him?
Look who's talking here.
You know what? I'll tell you. There was a time when I was powerlifting and I was like 220, and I was like sweating in the winter, and I was like walking upstairs. I was getting out of breath, and I was like, you know what? I'm too big, and I'm not meant to be this large out of my frame. So yeah, I think that powerlifting and weightlifting, there has to be some functional fitness put in there. And I started doing P90X, and I did the yoga in P90X, and that was like P90X was brutal. If anyone ever did that stuff, I did the yoga. I was ready to throw up. Like, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this. And I realized, I was like, wow, I'm really not functionally fit at all. And that's when I started I started jogging more, boxing. I lost a lot of weight, and then I lost too much weight. And then one time I like 2 months into that, I lost too much weight, and this guy's like resisting arrest. And I thought I would just be able to like grab them and throw them because I was used to having like the power and the weight behind me. And when I started wrestling, I was having a problem with them, and I was like, "Oh man, I gotta start powerlifting." So like, there's always that function. I don't know what Juju's talking about. He's a moron, so kind of hard to answer his question. But
I just think it's I just think it's funny coming from people that have triple fat necks to actually be saying anything about being in shape or overweight. Come on, I gotta laugh at that. Yeah, listen, it's very important. It's very important for cops to stay in shape. Like I said, Ron Lason had made some good comments here. I'd love to have that conversation about our hiring process. I do think that the training is completely lacking. Yes, the training is a major downfall of the NYPD, but we also need the right people in there that eventually, if we could change this thing over, if we could get them the proper training, at least we have the people that have the potential, right? I would always say when I would put people in my units, I didn't necessarily, what do you say? McCarry was always late return the Richard Simmons. But I never cared to have people in my unit that already had the tools. I always wanted people that they had the potential, that they're willing to learn and they have the ability to learn. Because that's one thing you learn in the military. And I will say this, is you learn how to learn. There is an art of how to learn, of how to remember things and actually how to learn things hands-on, how to learn things at a visual, because everyone learns at a different rate. But the military does teach you how to learn. And we need to make sure that our guys are properly trained. Someone put here, this is an interesting comment. I actually, Booster Malaka 1. I actually know this. I actually know who he's talking about here. So Ken Patera was a fat powerlifter. When he became a wrestler, he trimmed down because you need cardio. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, cardio is important. I think the most important cardio, I think, is sprints. If anybody, I recommend sprints, because not only do sprints build up your cardio, but they build muscle at the same time. You see a lot of times people that are marathon runners, they're not necessarily strong. If you ever look sometimes marathon runners, if you watch the marathon annual, you'll see sometimes some people, they look kind of like that skinny fat. You know what I'm talking about? Like they're thin, but they don't really have much muscle tone. And that's because when you're running long marathons, it also, not only does it burn fat, but it burns muscle. But when you do sprints, you ever see some of those sprinters, they got big giant legs. They're super strong. Sprints build your cardio, but they also build muscle.
Yeah, no, it's there's always a mix, right? You gotta, there's never a perfect, unless you have a few hours a day to spend hitting every aspect, it's a constant battle. It's because being in shape and working out and being functionally fit, it's just a constant battle. You constantly get injured. You're constantly working around those injuries. Yeah, crazy stuff. What was it? Rhodes here says March 2000 class was the last one to do body fat standards. So I don't know if you guys were using the actual calipers that were checking body fat. I'll tell you, when I was in the academy, I went into the academy. I was the same weight I am now. I was 210 pounds. I had way less body fat on me than I do now. I was 23 as opposed to 44 where I am now. So, so it was 21 years ago. I had I was playing basketball all the time. I was like, and after the academy, I would go right to weightlift. And the minute I walked in the academy, the guy's like, "You're overweight." And I'm like, "What do you mean I'm overweight?" He's like, "You're overweight. You got to lose weight." I was like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "I can't lose any weight. Like, how am I losing weight? Like, what am I doing?" I was like, I didn't have any fat on my body whatsoever. So like it was just like it was outdated, the body fat. And I still think it doesn't really, I don't think it's a good gauge unless you're actually technically getting the calipers and pinching the fat and seeing what you could grab. I don't believe, because all they're using is that chart. You're this height. I think it said for me, I needed to be 165 pounds. I'm like, if I'm 165 pounds, I have a big problem. I might be able to run for miles and days, but I'm not fighting with anybody. I'm not going to be able to fight with grown men at 165 pounds. I just wouldn't be able to do it. I would look emaciated. I would look completely emaciated.
I agree. I think BMI, body mass index, is so outdated. It doesn't account for muscle mass. I agree. They should, pinch you and check your your body fat ratio, because you could be big and muscular. And yeah, there is something to that, right? Because you don't want to be too big either. If you're in you look at some of the Navy SEALs, they're not big. They're not big guys. They're wiry. Because if you're too big, just like you said, John, when you're weightlifting, if you get to 230,
I know a lot of SEAls that are big dudes.
some of them,
a lot of them are short, little guys, but they're jacked.
No, I didn't say they're not jacked up, but they're not like big powerlifter size, like some of these big guys. Because the more weight,
I think the more SEAls I know are jacked, bro. And like I remember them active too, and
they're big. Listen. Also, the SEAls I knew were not big. Even the Marines, we weren't big guys. I'm not a big guy, but we were in shape, because the more muscle mass you have, or fat, the more weight you carry. And the bottom line, that does affect your cardio. That even if you're super muscular, when you watch heavyweights in boxing, or even heavyweights in UFC, they're not going to move as fast as the lightweights, because they carry more muscle mass. They don't have, you need more burning more oxygen. It definitely affects your cardio. That's why sometimes the UFC, some of these guys that are built like Adonises, they look amazing, and their cardio is not as good as the other guy, because they're just carrying too much muscle and it requires more oxygen. So, but
right. We got totally off course here. So
I was just going to say that.
You did a great job, Eric. You did a great job of taking us off course. I don't know what the hell we're even talking about. All right, so it's over now. Let's wrap up.
Well, listen, and Franco liked it. He said facts. So, we're talking about good stuff here.
All right, so Dog and Pony Show, right? We could wrap up the Subway Dog and Pony Show. Is it? What do you say?
The whole job's a Dog Pony Show. Yeah. I listen. It's really, like you said, common sense. I mean, I don't think you really have to be a police expert to realize that, wait a minute, your precincts are already short-staffed. I mean, you can correlate this to any business. Your precincts are already short-staffed, and you're going to take the personnel to put them in another spot. And so you're saying, we'll fix one problem, even if you have no idea about policing. Okay, we'll fix one problem, but we just create another problem. It's not really hard to figure out. It's common sense. You're right. Dog and Pony Show. And it just seems politically driven.
All right. Let's go on. Last topic. We're about an hour, 26 minutes in. We got about 1,300 people on here. Thank you for joining us this morning. Last topic. So for those of you guys that aren't familiar, 50a.org is a website where you could look up NYPD officers' disciplinary history. This came as a result of Andrew Cuomo signing into law the repeal of 50A, which protect the officers' disciplinary records. So we did an episode on some like Google employee who took this open source data and created this website, 50a.org. You're able to just put in any officer's name and their salary comes up, and all of this open source data pulls into it. He's often went on this podcast, took pictures from the podcast, updated the picture of the officer's disciplinary with them being on the podcast, or if they're anywhere, the job put them on Twitter, the job put them on Instagram or whatever. They'll grab those pictures. They'll use those pictures if they're in the paper, and put all this. So what this website 50a.org now has put a facial recognition feature in there, meaning you could put a picture, like snap a picture of a cop and put it into the website, and it'll give you similar looking officers based on that photo. And we also seen with this website, what it's been used to do is, honestly, it's been used by these people who like to call themselves auditors. Cop Watch, who should be coming on here next Thursday, we'll announce that soon, have used it to harass and annoy cops. Come up to them, read their disciplinary records, do all this stuff. So although we believe in transparency, we believe in also, you shouldn't be able to harass police officers. You shouldn't be able to take police officers out of their job, out of their mind frame. But that's what's going on right now is they've using this open source data, and they now use this facial recognition technology where you can put any picture of it and it'll show you similar looking officers. What do you think about that, Eric?
I think you and I started to speak about this a little bit, but I think this completely violates the Constitution. This is unconstitutional. And I think it's going to cause a major problem for safety purposes. We're already on the brink of potential corruption because of the 50A. You and I have talked about it a lot extensively. This 50A is creating, a real harmful environment for the cops. It's almost like the 50A is like an act of terrorism now. I believe, honestly, because you can get so much information about a cop. You really could get so much information. You can start to get personalized information and really turn the tables where the policing are no longer policing the streets, but people are starting to police the police officers, and you can really put threats on police officers' families. We've seen already, right? We've seen Rel come out to a cop's home. But now with this facial recognition, this is just another additive where we're putting cops in harm's way. And how can the cops protect the public if now they're in a precarious position as this, where people could really have leverage on them and say, you know what? Hey, listen, I know where you live. I know what you look like. When you're at work, I'm going to make sure your family gets a visit. This could lead to a lot of corruption where, people are like, you know what? All right, listen, I'll do what you want just to make sure my family's safe. But this facial recognition, to me, totally violates the Constitution, violates the Fourth Amendment. This is honestly, it's questionable whether it's constitutional or not when it comes to facial recognition for a perpetrator, person of interest. And now we're talking about facial recognition to a law enforcement officer. This is wild. We're living in a complete police state. I mean, we put this out because it's funny, but with humor.
Wait, hold up. This is what happens if you put the photo in. This is
No, I know. What I'm saying is the reality of this. What I'm saying is it's funny, but the reality is this is scary. This is really scary. At this point, what else do they want? They want you want the cop's fingerprint. I mean, this is going too far. I think it's completely unconstitutional, but I think this is really putting the cops in harm's way. I have a major problem with this.
So I think it really highlights, like, this whole thing highlights a huge discussion that needs to be had surrounding facial recognition technology. I think someone that was in the facial recognition unit just retired. Maybe we'll get them on the podcast soon to come talk about it. Because I understand that it could be a very valuable tool for law enforcement. But at the same time, I don't support facial recognition technology being utilized at all on the masses. I don't support a surveillance state. And many cops that do are very mad that now it's on 50A. So I'm like, wait, time out. You either support facial recognition technology or you don't. And I think that's the discussion here. It's like, you either support it or you don't. I believe facial recognition technology, if you're taking my face and running it against other faces, that is a search. You're searching me, whether you're coming up and putting your hands on me or not. I'm being searched. I believe that violates the Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution. And for American citizens, that should not happen. And, whether I go into a private business when I buy a ticket to go into Madison Square Garden and it's all the way in the little details, it's a violation search, unconstitutional. I don't think it should happen. I think it should be ripped out of all these places that are utilizing it. But I find it really funny that cops are very mad. Cops that support facial rec. Oh, what do you care, bro? You don't do nothing wrong. I don't do nothing wrong. Okay. What do you care, bro? What do you care, bro? And I got the same argument here. So it's either good or it's not. And like, that's the thing I see here. I don't like the way 50A is utilized. I think that it's important and transparent that officers, that there is accountability and we're able to get records that you're needed. Should you sue an officer? Should you make a complaint against an officer? Should you want to see how a case or an allegation goes against an officer, or if you were a victim of something? I think it's important that there's transparency. But the 50A in particular is being used to, at a moment's notice, harass and annoy police officers. So to me, I don't really even see an issue with the facial recognition portion of it. I just have a bigger issue with the fact that the NYPD to date has not put a memorandum out, has not taught officers what harassment of a law enforcement officer is, and when they should utilize that law, and how to effectively arrest people, and when people break that law, in conjunction with the district attorney's offices, to set boundaries. Listen, you could read my disciplinary record, but you could do it from 5, 6, 7 feet away from me. If you start to approach me in an aggressive manner, now you are being disorderly. You're harassing me. You're performing OGA, and you will be arrested for it. And I think that's the bigger issue. So everyone's pissed about it. I'm like, I see it a little bit different way. I don't know.
No, I don't think everyone's. I think there was a legitimate amount of people pissed off about it, but I don't think everyone sees it. I think there's a lot of people actually see it the way that you and I see it, given our point of view and perspective on this. Because clearly, I believe that the U.S. Constitution, right? We're all American citizens, and we all fall under the blanket of the U.S. Constitution. If you are here in this country legal and you're an American citizen, you have the rights of the U.S. Constitution, and that goes for cops, and that also goes for arrestees, right? Because you're innocent until proven guilty. You have the rights of the Constitution. And I think this is going to a complete police state. And the problem that I have with the 58, just even reflect on what you're saying, John, I agree. There should be transparency, right? And transparency is good, especially when it comes to policing, law enforcement. You have a lot of power, a lot of responsibility, accountability. You have the ability to take someone's life. So yes, transparency is important. Accountability. But I think we've created every avenue possible to actually make a complaint against a cop if there actually a complaint needs to be made, or someone feels that they have a legitimate complaint. When it comes to CCRB, you can make a phone call. You can go online. You can do it on person. You can do it at any government building pretty much in New York City. There's every avenue possible. There's all commercials out there to make a complaint. Police officers are identifiable by uniforms. They're identifiable by shields. They're identifiable by names. They're identifiable by their patrol cars. But now when we start identifying them by facial recognition, I agree. That's where we start going to the Fourth Amendment. And to me, that's a complete violation, right? We talk about people versus the board. We're actually encountering people on the street, right? In order to stop someone and detain them, you have to have reasonable suspicion. But yet on police officers, we don't have those protected amendments. Apparently, we're completely violating. I think this violates the law. I think that this should be brought forth in the courts. I did hear that the PBA will possibly bring this forward, but I do think this should be brought in court. What, the PBA didn't bring it forward?
I don't. I like they saying they are, but I just don't. I don't know that they have a case. I really don't. I don't know that they have a case at all.
I think they do. I think they do. I don't see. We talk about transparency, but I don't see how they can't say this doesn't violate the Constitution by doing facial recognition, especially when you have all these other avenues of identifying a cop. What other purpose can they say is for by identifying a cop? For what purposes? How are you going to utilize that? I mean, I guess you could say, does that matter? But according to the U.S. Constitution, you have a right to search and seizure and a right to privacy. I guess the argument could be, is your face open to public view? Yes, but does that mean we have a right to gather your information by? I mean, we can't just walk around.
The 50A said you have a right to disciplinary records are there. The photos that are in there are publicly sourced, public information, and all it is they're putting they're taking a photo like the photo of Steve Urkel. They put it in there and they show, all right, here are similarly officers with similar features to you. That's all it is. And so someone took this photo and boom, it runs the search. I don't see anything illegal about this. I don't. And again, like I think, I think the bigger problem is facial recognition, how it's being rolled out on the masses, on the public. I don't really see a big problem with this. I don't. It's like, all right, whatever. The thing, you're not holding me accountable for a crime. You're not matching me up against crimes. I'm not going to go to jail for this. I think the bigger problem is facial recognition technology being used by law enforcement instead of to search in the stupid database. I think, when I look at 50A, the problem is there's no, I don't want to say there's no protections. Officers, because there are. Officers don't know what to do when confronted and harassed by these people that have weaponized their disciplinary records.
Well, I think I want to reflect on that. I think that's the bigger issue. And we discussed that on a prior podcast when we had the redheaded female police officer who was completely accosted, harassed by utilizing her 50A, right? From a couple, I think it was I think it was Cop Watch or a couple of someone from a group that was completely biased and stained. I think it was Cop Watch. I'm not sure. But when they harassed that female police officer and her partner, it's exactly that. There hasn't been any support for the police department or the unions and how the police officers should respond. Right? How much space are they allotted? At what point does it become harassment? At what point is it actually intervening and actually impeding on them from doing their job? Right? They had a specific post, and they were in a position where they really had to divert their attention and possibly move from that location because it's starting to create a problem. So yeah, I agree. There's no memorandum, there's no directive, and that's ultimately the bigger problem here. When we just talk about facial recognition, I agree. I think, I believe in due process. I believe you're innocent until proven guilty. I don't think it should be utilized on the general public because we talk about it all the time. Your civil liberties in comparison to safety. Are we going to give up civil liberties for safety? The answer should be no. But I do think that this serves no purpose for this other than to harass the police officers and lead to potential corruption. I don't think we need to find similar faces of a police officer. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. There's so many avenues to actually get the identity of a cop. I think this is just another way of targeting the police officers, and it's almost like we're tipping the scales. Not about transparency and holding the police officers accountable, but I believe this is meant to hold the police officers hostage from doing their job. Eddie West, shout out to you, brother. $20 coffee and donuts. As long as the diaphragm law is in effect, cops are being set up for failure and arrest. If you're an active cop, you'll have monthly meetings with CCRB and possibly IAB. Sucks but true. Officer privacy works. Definitely recommend. Yeah, absolutely. If you're doing intrusive police work, I'm the quintessential case. If you're doing intrusive police work, and I say intrusive police work, and you're encountering people based on level 2, which is common law right required, you engage people in conversations, which may lead to level 3, which is level 3 is actually detaining people and stopping them, right? Because it may lead to a firearm. This is the intrusive police work that you're not getting support from the police department and getting targeted by the Civilian Complaint Review Board. Absolutely. Intrusive police work, which is necessary, is the bedrock and foundation of safety, is actually inhibited because of a biased group and disdain group, Civilian Complaint Review Board. That's why I recommend, if you're an active member of the service or you're retired, jump on the link with John and myself. On a monthly basis, we were attending CCRB monthly meetings virtually, and you get a lot of information and learn what's going on there. Contact me. Contact us at www.defianceunfiltered.com. Next time there's a CCRB meeting monthly, I'll send you the link. You can jump on virtually. If you're active, I recommend you don't speak. But if you should sit there and listen and see what goes on there and see what you're dealing with. If you're retired, jump in. Give us your thoughts. It's your First Amendment. You have a right to speak there.
Yeah, so Mikey G says, are you against law enforcement using facial recognition to possibly identify a perpetrator? I think I made that perfectly clear. Absolutely, I am. Why the hell do you have my photo and you're running it against criminal? The same way I don't want you to have my DNA. Why? Because they're imperfect technologies. You have no reason to search me. I don't need you to keep me safe because by all means, what I see is you failed at it. So there's no reason my face needs to be getting run during your criminal investigation. I'm absolutely against it. And I'm going to ask you the same question, Mikey. Are you against the facial recognition technology to be used to identify officers? Because it's a huge there's a huge problem I see with this. It's like, no, I support being able to use facial recognition technology to keep you safe, but I don't support when it's my face getting ran. Oh, okay. No, I have a problem with it. I don't support it. I believe it's an unconstitutional search. And there is no reason that I should be part of that criminal search when I've committed no crimes, done absolutely nothing wrong. And you're using my personal information, biometrics, facial biometrics, DNA, when I've done nothing wrong. I don't believe that you have the ability to utilize my body and my stuff. I don't at all. Here is not a criminal investigation. This is bullcrap to me. This is some loser on a website, and it's okay. All right, yeah, Eric did this and he did that. Okay, blah 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 blah. All right, whatever. You want to search me that way? The search is awful. It's terrible. Pat Donahue just sent me with Ron Jeremy. Like, it's hysterical. Like the faces that come up. I actually know two of the guys that you sent to. It's hysterical. So this is a legit thing. Like, this isn't a joke. Like, this is what happens when you put Eric.
This is John. This is communism. in there's areas in China that it's so safe, but they have completely given up their civil liberties. I mean, there's places in China where if you jaywalk, facial recognition will identify that person. They'll actually get a ticket in the mail. So is that the kind of environment we want? Absolutely not. This is not the environment we want. This country was not built on giving up your civil liberties for safety. Is there a fine line? Yeah, just like there's a fine line between love and hate. There's a fine line. Yes, I mean we need law and order. We need law enforcement, but we can't just completely impede on the U.S. Constitution. Absolutely not. And I mean, unfortunately, with this administration, we have done it. We've gone into this police state. But I agree, John. I think there's other ways to skin a cat and curb crime and actually fight crime without violating the U.S. Constitution. I believe in First Amendment. I believe in free speech. I think John Shell and Kaz Daughtry are complete idiots, but they have a right to First Amendment speech. I don't think that, you and I were pretty adamant about that when we heard City Council wants to put, sanctions and restrictions on what they can and can't say. And I just think that they should learn to be professional. That's something that should be taken care of within the police department, better leadership. But to actually say what they can and can't say, now we're impeding on First Amendment speech. This impedes on Fourth Amendment. We can't throw the Constitution out the window. I have a huge problem with that. I didn't join law enforcement, neither did you, to get rid of the Constitution. And I hope the cops didn't either. They have to ask themselves. That's one thing that's great by Mighty Fuzz. You have to check out Mighty Fuzz, been on this podcast. And he always says it. Do the cops understand? He asked this guy a question. Do the cops understand the oath that they take? Do they really understand it? And after hearing some of the responses, John, and you're saying that people are giving you a hard time about this, I would say that they really don't understand the oath that they've taken. Unfortunately, I don't think they really get it.
Yeah, so Mikey G says facial recognition runs a database of mugshots. It doesn't give you probable cause to arrest, but it can point to the right direction of a possible subject or an investigation. So, all right, I'm not talking about mugshots. That is a search. That is the same exact thing as what's happening in 50A. You're looking at a criminal database and you're running it and it's pointing you in a direction. I'm talking about I'm walking down the block and law enforcement takes my image, and now every time my image is in that thing, I've committed no crimes. I've done nothing wrong in this country. There's no mugshot of me. There is no mugshot of me anywhere. I'm walking down the block. I walk into Target, and that photo gets sent to the NYPD. And now every time you get a case and a bald guy pops up, I'm a bald Italian guy does anything, I'm getting my balls broke by the NYPD because look, I found him. It's McCary. I'm telling you, it's him. Yeah, no, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about I don't support facial recognition technology being used on the masses. Being used to conduct a search in a database that already exists is no different than you skimming through mugshots. It's no different to me. Same thing. It's just a computer doing it for it. And it's the same thing with the 50A. It's just a database and it's just skimming through it. It's nothing. But if you're just gonna capture all of our datas and have people that committed no crimes in this country in databases, now I have a problem. That is an unreasonable search. By law enforcement's allowed to keep mugshots for X amount of time. For certain crimes, they get thrown out. Right after a certain amount of time, it gets expunged. Right? I had a mugshot. I no longer have a mugshot. Right? Like, Donald Trump has a mugshot. He probably still has a mugshot right now. But, but I'm talking about that. We're talking about two different things. I'm not talking about running the search in databases you already have. I'm talking about putting Americans who've committed no crimes inside of databases and keeping their technology feature. And Joe Roscoe says it's about the purpose, John. Law enforcement will be using it for the purpose to ID someone in a criminal matter versus it being used for festivities. And that's the biggest thing to me is I'm saying that doesn't make sense to me, Joe. I don't care. Like, it doesn't matter what you're using it for. You either support the use of the technology or you don't. I see this as a non-issue. The same way I see it's a non-issue of there are already people inside of a criminal database because they've committed crimes and been accused of committing crimes and found guilty of committing crimes. And you're allowed to, it's just a different form of search in that database that exists. I'm saying I don't want to be put in that database, and I don't support Americans who've done nothing wrong being put in that database, getting their image captured from facial recognition, which, by the way, was happening, and I'd be shocked if it's not still happening.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting. It's to me, it's ironic. It's kind of a paradox where we get 50A and all these advocates that want to hold police accountable, right? But they want to give potential perpetrators and subjects and persons of interest afforded every opportunity, and they bring up the U.S. Constitution also. They talk about the protections of the U.S. Constitution, right? Which is why a lot of these advocates are completely against the gang database for that reason, right? They say you shouldn't be on a gang database forever. You shouldn't be on for there should be you shouldn't be on for the criteria that people have put on these gang databases. But yet, when it comes to police officers, there's no correlation. There's no metric measure. There's no standard. It doesn't apply the same way. Just as we see with the clean slate. It's amazing how you could be a felon and then you could get a clean slate. But if you're a police officer and you're the most complained cop, you can't get a clean slate. So I probably, honestly, think about it. I said, I was telling you, John, I was like, what? I'd rather be the most complained cop than the most corrupt cop. But you know what? Honestly, I'd have a better chance in life if I was a felon. At least at some point, I would get a clean slate. But being the most complained cop, there is no clean slate. So it's funny the irony and how the scales are tipped different when it comes to the general public, seeking out potential perpetrators. But when it comes to cops, I don't agree with this facial recognition at all. But when it comes to cops, it's just a complete different standard. It's just to me, it's disheartening, and it's amazing that the cops are just treated like peasants and second-class citizens.
Would you consider a politician a public servant, same as a cop?
Oh, absolutely. I sure do.
You know how you could file a complaint against a member of city council?
Yeah. you can't. Pretty much. Good luck, right?
So the way to file a complaint against a member of city council is you have to write a letter, attention one person, to city council. It's the only way to file a complaint.
Didn't we mention that in the podcast? I think there was one with Lincoln Wrestler. And they kind of rejected it. There was one.
I don't know. I don't know. I just know that I went to file a complaint, and I'm like, is this a joke? And then I was posting about it, how it's like you could file a complaint all these ways against cops, but if city council does anything wrong, write a letter to this guy who puts the rose in the shredder. Now we never got it.
Right. Who responds to that letter?
Yeah, sick. All right, listen, we're going on 2 hours. We got about 1,400 people on here. Do us a favor, like, share, subscribe. We're going to start to wrap this up. Anything you want to talk about before we get out of here?
That's a good question. So we mentioned the 50A, which I know we said we would discuss. Obviously, the shortage of cops, the civil matter with these illegal military age males. I know there was another pressing issue. I'm trying to remember what it was.
Well, it was the mayor. It's the mayor, and just like in other news, they're not saying what his medical issue is whatsoever. Right. They're refusing to say what's going on with him.
And we did mention the mandate, right? We mentioned that Trump is bringing back.
Trump this morning reinstated with back pay members of the military. So I think, all you guys that were affected, that, are still suffering through all of this. I think there's going to be bright days ahead for New York City workers in the future. I don't know that it happens right away, but I think I'm drafting all. I can't even talk about what I'm doing, but I'm doing something right now, and I'm researching. I'm doing a lot of research. I'm doing a lot of researches on the different agencies and how they were affected, and the laws that were violated, and the policy that was violated. And it's insane to me, man. When I go through all of the data and I'm reading these court cases and I'm talking to people about their experiences and what happened to them, it's amazing that this wasn't put to a stop sooner. And always the biggest thing for me was in the NYPD. And I obviously speak about in the NYPD because that's where I was there. I experienced it firsthand, so I could talk to it from a personal lens. But the thing that bothered me the most is that we're law enforcement, and I would expect us to have the most integrity and the last people that would turn blind eye to blatant violations of the law, blatant abuses of employees. I think I do think and you know, I think, you know, there will be large sums of money being paid. Are they going to be phenomenal? No, I don't think people are getting 50 million. No, but it's going to be large sum of money being paid out to some individuals, and it's not because it's because of a huge failure in Eric Adams. When he stepped into office, he should have said, all right, this is over. Put all these people back to work, and it would have been nothing. You know, and now you have people that you wrongfully terminated for out of work for 3 years. You know what I mean? So, all right, you know whose fault it is we spent that money? It's Eric Adams. You know whose fault it is that you're going to have to spend all of this money to pay out victims of sexual abuse in the NYPD and other New York agencies? Eric Adams. That's who.
Well, I think it's important to note there's no doubt about it that the mandate has a major correlation with this DEI movement. I think that on this podcast, and I'll say, you know, I usually don't like to toot our own horns, but I will on this time and say that I think we really brought the evidence together where we showed you the mandate in correlation to the DEI movement, and the evidence based was the watch party we did with Tanya Meisenholder, you know, former commissioner for the NYPD, where she refers to white law enforcement officers as knuckle draggers. And we could see how the mandate really opened up those doors for the DEI movement and the infection of the NYPD. So, you know, when Diane asked earlier about new recruits in comparison to our veterans, I think that's where the door was opened right there, right? With this whole DEI movement. We got rid of the veterans through mandate, through cops like myself doing intrusive police work that have been completely ousted and targeted for actually doing what we were paid and trained to do in this type of intrusive police work, and long with broken windows. We also have political targets like Sal Greco. We have Marlon Bethel, also targeted for asking questions and terminated based on the mandate, and many others that were affected by it, right? This whole thing of emasculation of the police department. So I think we brought the evidence and really brought this together and showed you how this was all calculated and all weaved in together. But ultimately, Eric Adams, by continuing with the mandate, was not about caring for lives, but it was allowing this DEI movement to really change the face of the NYPD and also change the face of this entire New York City administration. So, but yeah, you know, that's where we're at right now. That's the bottom line. Eddie West, shout out to you, brother. Coffee and donuts, $10. Here we go. I understand opposition meets opportunity. That's right, brother. You know it. However, I think Cop Watch serves no purpose other than to harass and annoy cops and money grab from lawsuits. Vile human beings, laws, boundaries should be set. So listen, I agree. Listen, Cop Watch stalked my career for almost a decade, and I think that they serve. Most of their purpose is to, they say it's to monitor cops, but they do. They harass, they impede them from doing their job, really diverting their attention, more of an annoyance. But at the same token, I do believe opposition meets opportunity. We had Cop Watch here because we had great discussions. Their root cause of Cop Watch, how they see the world and how we see the world. And that's why I say don't try to win an argument, but see how they see the world and understand where they're coming from. And I do think that the conversation we had with Cop Watch has led to a better relationship for the cops with Cop Watch on the street. It actually made it safer for them. So having Cop Watch on here again is only a benefit to have a more conversations, because I do believe that the key to community relations with the police department is communication. So this is another avenue. Let's explore it. Hear out what Cop Watch has to say, and really what they believe. You don't have to agree with it. You can say to yourself, okay, this is what they believe. And I do, and I've said this before, John, I really believe that Cop Watch believes that what they're doing is the right thing by getting out people like me and other people like that are what they consider bad police officers for going out doing intrusive police work. I believe that they believe what they're doing is right, even though I don't agree with it. And I don't think they understand the inner linings of police work, but that's what they believe.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with you. So, yeah. So Eric Adams apparently has the right to privacy, even though myself, Marlon Bethel, and the rest of every other New Yorkers had no right to privacy regarding their own medical needs and wants. So, yeah, I don't know. What's your before we get out of here? What's your predictions on Adams? What's going on? I mean, it's obviously all speculation. We have no idea what can happen. Let's take bets. It's Super Bowl season anyway, right? It's a season of betting. It's cold and flu season as well as a season of bets. Let's throw some Eric Adams bets out there. I'm gonna go first. I'm going to say that the fact that State Assemblywoman Jennifer Raj Kumar, who looks like a schoolgirl who has a crush on Eric Adams and follows him nearly everywhere he goes in her red dresses, was running for New York City Comptroller, and 4 hours prior to this announcement has said that she's going to run for public advocate. It's almost a signal to me that Jumaane Williams will be the mayor for a short time. So I'm going to predict, I'm going to bet, I'm not predicting, I'm going to bet that Eric Adams is going to step down. My second hedge on that is I'll say that if he doesn't step down, it's a superseding indictment is coming shortly. But I lean further with he's stepping down, and which was really my always position. I'm shocked that he's still here. The dude's, I can't believe it. I'm shocked he's still here. So what are your bets? What do you lean in greater? Like, what do you say?
So I've been saying for the longest time that Eric Adams, he won't step down, right? And I agree. But now I think this is the game changer. I think at this point he's been playing the chess game pretty well, moving the pieces around. But now I think it's checkmate. Now he knows if he moves to the left, he's done. He moves to the right, he's done. At this point, it looks like though he's not confident he's going to get the pardon. And his administration has completely crumbled, and there's potentially more indictments, right? So he goes to the left, there's more indictments. He goes to the right, he's not confident he's getting this pardon. So I think at this point, it's checkmate. So I don't think that he will say he's stepping down. I think that this medical thing is going to be what gets him to step down. That's what I think. I think
he's going to blame it on the medical. He's going to be, I can't do it.
Maybe he's going to say he needs a penis enlargement or something. I don't know what's going on here, but this is. I mean, it's a smart point. I don't know who came up with this idea. It's a smart idea to say, well, he's not really stepping down. He wants to serve the city, but he's having some medical issues. So that's my firm belief. And really, what sealed the deal is the red dress. That really, that sealed the whole deal for Jumaane Williams. Starting to pop around again, and she wants to run for public advocate along with him with his medical issues, and he hasn't really gotten a final answer about this pardon. To me, that's an indication to me he's going to be out, unless if he gets a pardon, then it's all over.
Last thing, politics. Before we go, you got a couple of minutes?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, we got about 1,400
Who needs
people.
sleep?
Last thing before we get out of here, Joe Borelli. Can't stand Joe Borelli. He's always said he's weak. Everyone's thanking him up and down. So I put a tweet out the other day saying it's expected Joe Borelli's going to step down. Joe Borelli the next day goes to the Post, says he's going to step down, right? Joe Borelli steps down. Joe Borelli, a minority leader for New York City Council. Joe Borelli, same guy, is not on the lawsuit against de Blasio and Jay Varmer to overturn the mandate, right? Common Sense Caucus, minority leader. Joe Borelli, who really has never gave a crap about anybody that was forced out of their career, and during the time of saying he was anti-mandate, was complying with the entire mandate. Never offered a legal solution, never offered to help. Joe Borelli was not my representative. My representative was David Carr. David Carr is Joe Borelli, the second coming, did absolutely nothing, said nothing, ignored me, ignored my phone calls, didn't want to know me, pretends he doesn't know me, pretend I don't exist. I could, and everyone's telling me, oh, I should run. I should run for Joe Borelli's seat. I'm not running for Joe Borelli's seat. I don't want to be in city council. If I did run, I would run to unseat David Carr, who was my representative and did absolutely nothing for me, and I would beat David Carr. Hands down. I would wipe the floors with David Carr. And I would also win Joe Borelli's seat. Frank Morano, WABC radio show host, Other Side of Midnight, is now going to replace Joe Borelli. Frank Morano is now ignoring me on Twitter, will not answer if he supports reinstatement and back pay of New York City workers, will not answer if he supports New York City retiree healthcare workers, is a longtime friend of Justin Brandon and a lot of leftist Democrats, just as Joe Borelli. So he's Joe Borelli 3.0. So everyone's telling me that I need to get behind Frank Morano. I am not getting behind Frank Morano unless Frank Morano is in line with us on that, with me particularly on those issues. I refuse to get in line with Frank Morano just because it's friendly. It's expected that he's going to get an endorsement from Trump. Obviously, John Katzimatidis and WABC, he's going to have some big money behind him. With all that being said, I'm fully aware that I could still get out there grassroots because I have boots on the ground people that are willing to knock on doors, and I will win that election without the money, without the president's endorsements, without any of that. However, I feel what we're doing now is much more powerful and has much more impact than I could ever do sitting in a New York City Council seat. I feel getting the news out there and what's happening and informing people is much more what I want to do than putting myself and pigeonholing myself in a New York City Council seat. So someone said here, Morano, another useless closet lib, never been. Frank Morano is not a closet lib. He is well out there that he is not a Republican. He said it numerous times. However, he has the political backing of New York City behind him. I want to support Frank Morano. I do. But in order for me to support Frank Morano has to support city workers. I don't care that Frank is friends with people who I'm friends with. Does not matter to me. It will not change how I speak about anything. It's the same is true with Donald Trump. I voted for Donald Trump. I want Donald Trump to be successful. I will call out when I see that I don't like something. And it's the same thing. I don't like how Frank Morano's moving. I don't like the move that Joe Borelli moved. I thought it was very sneaky. He's becoming a lobbyist. And now he's trying to push, in my opinion, it appears he's trying to maneuver David Carr to be the minority leader. I don't believe that David Carr should be the minority leader. One, because I don't believe Joe Borelli, who now is a lobbyist, should get a vote of who replaces him. Two, I don't believe that Ina Vernikov has the ability to vote in that election because Ina Vernikov, who lifted her shirt up, whether it was an accident, I do believe it was an accident. I don't believe she should be arrested, is currently under an ethics committee review. David Carr sits on the board of that ethics review. I believe that's a conflict of interest. I believe hands down, the only person that I think that has the ability to be the minority leader is the person who has exhibited leadership during this time, who has protected retiree healthcare workers, who's stood up for New York City workers, who's fought against this vaccine mandate, is Joanne Ariola. That's it. The only other person besides her, if we want to go in line, and I have my own issues with her. The only other person I see behind Joanne Ariola is Vicky Palladino. And that is it. That is how I see things. I see them black and white. To me, this is a black and white issue. Joanne Ariola for New York City minority leader.
I agree, right? We have to support who's going to support New York City civil service workers. And not only that, I think that we're not honest, and I'm glad that you brought that up. I voted for Donald Trump also, but that does not mean I believe he's some type of messiah. And I love everything he says. Like I'm gaga over it. I think that's not being honest, right? There are policies that he discusses that I'm like, you know what? Thank God Trump is there. There's certain things he says. I'm like, I didn't like it. That was stupid. I think those are honest conversations. Those are the same thing. I mean, our friends and listeners on this podcast, there's plenty of times where you say things, John, like, I don't agree. They push back. Or I say things and they push back. That's being honest. If everything we said, you're like, oh, I agree with everything, that wouldn't even be an honest question, right? Let's be honest with each other. So it's actually a good question here, John. So Stephen S., before you answer the question, I just want to make a comment on it. So Stephen S., shout out to you, brother. Has been a great friend to the podcast. Says, could you do both, John? Podcast and city council, just asked. Now, I can tell you this. John has a major passion for politics. He loves it. It's really, me personally, I like talking about the politics, how it's really intercepted and injected policing and how it affects us in daily life. But I wouldn't want to be in politics. Just not my thing. John loves it, has a major passion for it. I tell him all the time, run. But you know what? We both have agreed, though, that together we could do far more and have a far more of a reach and impact on podcasting. If John ever decides to move into politics and run, I support him. And our friends and listeners, I'm sure they support you too. But I think we do have a far more reach podcast. And if you agree, let us know. But I think this really allows us to have our First Amendment speech. And I think we could be far more effective in supporting, rank and file law enforcement or just just supporting various issues, right? We're trying to really broaden. We speak about a lot of topics, mental health and different things. So I think we could help in different avenues with that. So, John, what is your response to that?
Well, one, I think I'm gonna push back on you first, Eric, because one, I believe that we are in politics. This is a political
I knew you were going to say that.
This is a political podcast. Whether people know it or not. I believe it's a blue collar podcast, but it's a political podcast. There are times when we're beating major players in the political game at our numbers of downloads, right? Sure. Passing Newt Gingrich, passing Jen Psaki, passing these people have millions and millions of dollars behind them on their podcast. This is an independent platform, and the amount of people that listen and tune in and respect it, it's on all sides of the aisle. It's eye opening. So it's there's been a lot of amazing things done as a result of having a different eye on the media and a different form of analyzation on not only police work, but on politics and legislation. So could I do both? No, I can't. I'm pretty conscientious. I could only do one or the other, in my opinion. If I'm going to sit there and say I'm going to serve the people, then I'm going to spend 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, serving the people of the district that I serve in. And I believe where I'm sitting now is, I spend 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, doing things that actually serve the people. But I have a much larger view from here than I would at just being in a few mile range of Staten Island and New York City. Ultimately, I think it would be hysterical for me to be in a city council seat. I would get absolutely nothing accomplished, but I would play. I would be a great middle linebacker, bro, because I'll tell you, nothing's getting by me, and I'm going to call it out like it is. But I think, I don't foresee myself running in the future. I thought about it. I've had offers to do it. But life is crazy, and I didn't think I was going to be podcasting either, or ever be on the media either. And look at me now, So I don't know. I just don't think you could do both. I think you got to be all in on something or not. I believe in the mission of free and fair media. I don't even want to say that we're balanced. I don't want to say that we're unbiased. I just say that we support open discussion, because we're all a little biased. We're all a little lean. Obviously I lean conservative. Eric leans conservative. But we believe in free open discussion, and we're gonna look to get other voices on here and other opinions here. And I think the fact of how many people actually tune in every day and listen and that reach out and thank us, I think it shows that this is vital. This needs to happen, and I think it needs to get pushed even further to a national level, not just New York City based. So
I think you answered very well, and I kind of correlated to this. So if anybody here watches Shark Tank, that's one of my favorite shows. I love Shark Tank. I love their business mindset. But one thing they always say on Shark Tank is when they get people coming up with an invention or an idea for a business, if they find out that they have another job and they're not willing to give up that job and go all in on the business that they're going in with Shark Tank, they kind of frown upon it. Like, you'll hear them say, like Mark Cuban, like, I don't want somebody that's not giving their all. Like, you got to give up your job and be all in on this. And so I agree with you, right? If you're going to be in politics, as far as actual, taking a city council seat, you would need to be all in, right? You couldn't divert your attention from the podcast and also that. So that's why I think that John is right? It's kind of like we've entered this realm of politics here. I always say it's police media, but it's also is a form of politics. He's right. So that's why I think, we kind of have our own seat on this podcast. And I think we have a more impact. And I think we have, not only that, we actually have we have a lot of people behind us. We have our friends and listeners here on the podcast who give us a lot of great information. I get a lot of good stuff from you guys. You guys give a lot of good information. Like, you know what? I didn't think of that, or I missed that, or someone, we talk about something and then you comment and add to it. So we're working together. I think it's more effective, and we're getting real people here to help with these discussions. So I think that you got to be all in. I agree. I think you have to be all in to be effective. So I would say it's one or the other. Either you take a seat in the New York City Council, or whatever, whatever form of politics you choose, or we're all in on the podcast. But I think the podcast, we could do more. I think, Stephen, by the way, great question. I really do. I think that was a great question, brother. I think that was on point. So thank you for asking that, because these questions are great. It just shows that our friends and listeners that you care. They're asking great questions. Juju, you asked some really stupid questions, but these are great questions and really get the conversation going. So, John, like I said, I believe that we're more of a powerful entity in this aspect. We have friends and listeners behind us that are supporting us, and we support them. So we have this network, and I think it makes us stronger. We can, I think we have more of a powerful voice. We don't have the money behind us. We're getting it with coffee and donuts, but but we have real perspective. And I think that's what this is: real perspective, real compassion, real care. And I think we've shown how much how far you can go without the money behind you. So when you have people actually supporting you can do it.
Pop by damn on. I go into politics. Could Kaz, aka Juju, become Eric's co-host?
That's great. Oh my god. Kaz, I know you know how to work the Xbox controller. I hope you know how to do the production behind scenes.
The upside down symbol. We gotta make a shirt with that. We gotta make a shirt with that. That's the next shirt. Look out for that one. Yeah. But yeah, listen, I had a successful business while we were doing this, and we only did the show once a week for a long time, and I walked away from it. Right, I walked away from that business because I said, I believe in this. I think I want to do this full time, and we did. And since that moment in time, which was only a few months ago, I mean, there's been an explosive growth. So it's I think you got to be all in. You got to be in on something, and so that's it. Finest Unfiltered, baby, small little podcast that nobody cares about, but Juju's on here every day. So yeah. Let's wrap it up. 2 hours, 15 minutes, about 1,500 people on here. Thank everybody for joining us. If you didn't already, just please do us a favor. Like, subscribe, share it out. And we appreciate all you guys for tuning in. Eric, you want to end this out?
Yeah, small podcast, big steps. Thank you so much, friends and listeners. I really do appreciate the questions. Some of these questions are fantastic, the comments. Look forward, we'll have some episodes coming up. Ron Layson and I were just talking. I think we're going to do that. A roundtable about the candidate assessment division. I think that's interesting about the hiring process of hiring process then and now, if we see any similarities or comparisons. So let's keep podcasting. See you tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning is going to be a good show, quite interesting. See you 8:05 live Eastern time. And of course, for me, 5:05 bright and early. Shout out. See you soon.
Oh yeah, tomorrow. Hakeem Gibson, Perception of Law Enforcement. He's going to be on. I think you guys haven't already, check him out on Instagram, Perception of Law Enforcement. He posts videos of cops. We're going to get into it with him. Appreciate all you guys for joining.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?
Law enforcement professionals dedicate their lives to serving and protecting our community. But who's protecting their financial futures? That's where Laidlaw Blue comes in. Our wealth management platform is specifically designed for the law enforcement community. Laidlaw Blue is a division within Laidlaw Wealth Management, run by retired New York City detective John McDermott. His status as a retired detective uniquely positions him to establish a deep connection between Laidlaw Blue and the law enforcement community. Our platform is easy to use and provides a range of financial services, including investment management, retirement planning, and insurance solutions. With Laidlaw Blue, you can secure your financial future and provide for your loved ones. Our team of experienced financial advisors understands the unique challenges and opportunities that law enforcement professionals face. We're here to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning and achieve your goals. Laidlaw Blue. Secure your financial future today. Book a meeting using the QR code displayed or call us directly on 888 901 Blue. That's 888 901 Blue.